3 years ago, I was unexpectedly transported to Mexico City. I landed in a different world filled with magic. It turned out that I had awakened a unique ability. I could perceive the exact coordinates of Earth. The locals all mocked my power, saying it was only good for throwing out trash. But I did the exact opposite. I packaged and sent every bit of magical knowledge back to my son. I sent it all straight to the authorities. While the local mages still need massive support, piously reciting incantations just to cast a single spell. I, on the other hand, unleashed forbidden magic. Eternal sincerity. A single attack from me obliterated an entire city in this other world. And it was all because the authorities back home didn't just analyze the magic systematically. They investigated the entire situation. They developed a process to cultivate mages, mass-producing them without the need for spells. Immediately after, the Taoist masters gathered in the city of Guizhou. They discovered that magic power could fuel the arcane arts of ancient texts. And that changed everything. Earth had officially restarted the path of the ancient, immortal cultivation civilization. The Chinese authorities crossed over into this other world with millions of immortal cultivators. They didn't know what I was really waiting for at the start. My goal was simple, a total act of self-rescue. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. 3 years is more than enough time for an ordinary person from modern society to become completely numb to these barbaric scenes. Fan, your rent is due tomorrow. If you don't pay, you'll be hit with a $1,000 fine. We'll kick you out of the city to feed the ogres. 3 years ago, I was transported to this divine world. I arrived here with nothing but the clothes on my back. I became a low-level traveling merchant, the bottom of the barrel. The magic in this world is drying up and fading away. The land itself has become a barren wasteland. The desert is crawling with all kinds of monsters. If I can't sell enough bread to pay my housing fees, and they throw me out of the city, I'm a dead man. Hey, Void Transporter, is the bread not selling well today? Thank you. Why don't you try your teleportation technique again? Maybe this time you can actually teleport something. Go find some lost supplies for us. I'm used to this kind of mockery by now. Last year, I awakened my merchant talent, resource transportation. I thought it would be my golden ticket. The capital I needed to finally establish myself. But no matter what I try to transport, everything gets consumed by the void, completely swallowed whole. In the end, I blew through all my savings and still didn't understand why. Now, I can't even afford to pay my rent. Eviction is staring me in the face. Thank you. Thank you. She is the goddess of wealth and nature, the goddess of war. Praise be to Lirio. And there she is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. People of the divine domain, our world is running dry. But do not despair, for the gods have found a solution. A new hope for all of you. A promised land filled with victory. Thank you. She is incredibly rich. There is simply nothing she doesn't know. Wait 10 years, and then we will lead you to a new experience. Every creature there has multiplied into a massive swarm, and they will all become your slaves. Thank you. Expedition. Watching this scene, my heart doesn't feel even the slightest ripple. After all, the grand promises of the gods have nothing to do with an insignificant ant like me. Thank you. That's it. A planet. A blue planet. The world they are about to invade is Yogel. In an instant, a surge of extreme rage flooded my heart. But that rage was quickly swallowed by the cold shadow of death. Despair. Now, all I can do is wait. I am just an ant who can barely find enough to eat. What right do I have to stop the actions of the gods? But right as my anger and despair began to intertwine, countless specks of light appeared. They flickered deep in my mind, the very objects I had been trying to see, the ones I had tried to transfer all throughout this year. I immediately focused, sensing the exact location of every single one. But then, I realized something. Every last one of them had gone to Earth. After a moment, I rushed back to my dilapidated shack and slammed my hand down. I threw myself behind the broken wooden door. Then, I sank my entire spirit into the depths of my consciousness. Soon, the countless points of history began to shift. The lights in my mind started to flicker. They shone bright, like beacons in the dark. They were scattered across every corner of my homeland. Not long after, my mental power began to fade. I locked my focus onto a single point of light. It was the most valuable thing I owned, the crown jewel of all my possessions. Retrieve it. Thank God, I actually did it. I really pulled it off, but then, I tilted the container. The vessel felt empty. I hesitated, filled with doubt. I looked closer and saw something at the very bottom. The jar was filled with soil. I took a small pinch and brought my hand up. As it reached my nose, my entire body went stiff. This wasn't the stench of the rotten earth from the god realm. This was the scent of fresh soil after the rain back home. My talent has never failed me. If it can bring back the soil of my homeland, it can bring back so much more. Right then, a crazy idea began to take root in my mind. The earth in this world is barren, and everything withers away. A single bag of flour can be traded for a slave, and that food is nothing compared to the abundance of my homeland. I might still be just an ant in this place, but this ant can now bite through the barrier between two worlds. If I only rely on myself, I know I'll never be able to change a thing. But standing behind me is my great nation. I can send information back, knowledge, magic books, even weapons. In 10 years, China will surely find a way to deal with these gods. But before I can strike back, I have to survive. This vessel can only be used for the construction of one building. It can cover 5 days of lodging. To survive, I must send a request for help to the Blue Planet. If I transfer myself to an institution too hastily, they'll likely treat me like a dangerous specimen. So I'm left with only one choice. I pulled a dry bag from the house and dipped it into the water, right under the bed. I grabbed some gray hawthorn paper and charcoal and began writing feverishly. I checked it over and over to make sure there weren't any problems. I had to be certain there were no mistakes. Immediately, I concentrated every ounce of mental strength in my body. I had to launch it toward the shores. The coordinates of the Blue Planet. Thank you. 3 days. I only have 3 days left. Meanwhile, back at a residential complex, the health monitoring system is running. The ordinary potential of the Blue Planet. My mom came home and just stared at my photos, lost in her thoughts. It's been like this since I disappeared 3 years ago. Mom has been living in a daze, confused and broken every single day. During these 3 years, she taught herself various online tracking techniques. She also spent most of her money on the city's construction, draining the family savings. She even hired private detectives to investigate the southwest border. But every lead ended in a dead end. The result was always a rejection. Nothing but those cold, hard words. Missing person. Suddenly, Mom sat up straight as a board because of a dark brown bag. It had appeared out of nowhere, right in the center of the coffee table. She had just finished cleaning that table, right before she stepped out. It was only morning. How was this even possible? Thank you. Mom reached out and touched the bag. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. She realized the texture of the bag. Felt incredibly strange to the touch. Immediately, a wave of pure terror washed over her heart. But a sudden thought filled her. With a burst of desperate courage, Lizzie-Lynn gritted her teeth. She untied the knot in the rope and pulled the bag open. Inside was a piece of rough paper, folded with perfect care. The moment I saw that familiar handwriting, everything came rushing back. My body trembled as I read. Mom, it's me, Lin Fan. I'm not dead, but I've been transported. It was my handwriting, plain as day. Xiao Fan. Right now, I'm in a world filled with magic and gods. The words on the paper seemed to vibrate with a life of their own. The gods of this world are planning to invade Earth in 10 years. I've awakened a talent to teleport objects, but I'm limited to 500 grams at a time, and I can only activate it once every 3 days. What kind of nonsense was my son writing? Had they damaged his brain? Or was this some sick threat from his kidnappers? Mom, this is our only hope. Please, make sure to fill this pigskin bag with flour. Remember, the total weight cannot exceed 1 kilogram. It must be exactly 500 grams over the limit. I will teleport it back in 72 hours. Mom, please believe me. We had plenty of time. He wanted flour? I looked. I stared at those last 2 words over and over. Flour. A wire in my brain suddenly sparked, like a circuit finally connecting. Teleportation? Magic? An invasion of Earth? It was all a load of nonsense. This was a secret code from the kidnappers to evade the police. They didn't want money because a bank transfer could be traced. This flour wasn't the kind you keep in a kitchen. They were talking about a banned substance. That white powder. They didn't just want my son. They wanted to drag me into this, too. They were trying to turn me into their accomplice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, 110. I'd like to report a crime. In another world, I initiated the transmission. I sent all my magical knowledge back to my homeland. I wanted to rely on the government's strength to translate the content. But my country didn't just stop there. They systematically analyzed the magic. They even developed a research process to mass-produce mages while the locals were still praying for devotion. I unleashed the eternal taboo. No seals required. I can destroy a massive city. In another world with a single strike. Problem solved. It turns out that 3 years ago, I was in Mexico City when I was accidentally transported to another world. But this world is a wasteland, and magic here is dying out. Every day, I racked my brain just to survive, until the gods announced they would invade Earth in 10 years. That's when my master transfer talent finally activated once again. As long as I can transfer and exchange items, I can bring over the abundant materials from Earth. Earth is definitely the key to everything. With its resources, I'll be able to quickly establish my dominance in this other world. To avoid any accidents, I first sent a handwritten letter home, hoping to reach the authorities through my family. But who would have thought that after reading it, my mother would completely misunderstand my intentions? She actually thought my descriptions were a secret code from kidnappers. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, 911. I want to report a crime. Hello, please tell us what happened. I received a ransom letter from my son, who disappeared 3 years ago. The kidnappers don't want money. They're asking for contraband. A kidnapping case? Don't worry, ma'am. We're sending someone over right now. Thank you. Hello. Mr. Ali, we're from the West District Station. After they came in, my mother laid out all her wild theories. She went on and on about every single one of her assumptions. Then she pointed to the bag sitting on the tea table. It was the pigskin bag I had sent. Officer Canway examined it carefully at first. Then he pulled on his gloves. He reached out and picked up the evidence. He was treating my letter like a crime scene. He noticed the texture of the bag felt strange. The surface was covered in bizarre, intricate patterns. As he leaned in closer, he caught a whiff of it. It had an indescribable, otherworldly scent. He wrinkled his nose in confusion. Did the kidnappers make their own paper to avoid being tracked? Their level of caution is extraordinary. Don't worry, Mrs. Lee. We're going to run this through our forensic network. We need to take these items back to the station for the night. We'll start the technical analysis immediately. We'll update you on any progress as soon as possible. Thank you, officers. Lao Wang, give me a hand with this. Check the material costs and the composition of this thing. See if you can pull any data from it. Maybe you can find a lead. We're on it right now. Criminals are always coming up with new tricks. Their methods are getting more sophisticated by the day. Back at the station, the forensic team got to work. Mao Wang focused all his attention on the sample. He skillfully cut a small piece from the pigskin bag. He sent it straight into the genome sequencer for analysis. But after half an hour of waiting, the look on his face shifted completely. His calm expression turned into pure shock. Professor, Officer Canway, you need to come here and see this right now. Hurry. I placed the fragments inside for analysis. I wanted to see exactly what kind of material I was dealing with. But the database came up empty. There wasn't a single match. The fiber structure of this thing is impossible. It doesn't match anything in the country. Does it match any known fiber in the world? Not according to our entire database. So then, what about the bag itself? That's even weirder. First, we extracted the DNA. We thought it was the kind of DNA you'd find in a body, specifically from an internal organ diaphragm. We thought it was pig, but it doesn't even match that. Look at the DNA sequence. It's not a pig. Could it be human? Not that either. Thank you. So we compared its DNA sequence with the cellular DNA sequence. Every single species genome recorded in human history is in this system. Everything from across the entire world. Mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, even insects and microorganisms. But this doesn't match a single one of them. Tell me the truth. Where the hell did you get this thing? The DNA of the source material. This object right here. I'm afraid it doesn't belong to any other. It doesn't belong to any known creature on Earth. I've traveled to another world, a world of magic and gods who plan to invade Earth in 10 years. That can't be true. Thank you. Hello, I'm from the Municipal Technical Reconnaissance Team, Sanjui from the West District Station. I need to speak with your boss immediately because I have a very special case here. It might be necessary to report this to the provincial office, or even higher. And immediately, the explanation from San Juan attracted massive attention from the higher-ups. Shortly after the authorities were briefed, the information climbed through every level of command. Finally, a top-secret document was delivered. It landed right on the desk of Minister Wang Chun at the Ministry of State Security. A triple helix DNA structure. Travel to a divine world. An invasion of Earth in 10 years. Is the enemy this time really coming from another world? These words sounded like pure insanity, but they were paired with an identification report, confirming the DNA of a non-terrestrial creature. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I read it. Thank you, I said, dismissing the messenger. Old Chun, it's me, Wang Chun. Minister Wang, what brings you here at this hour? Is there another massive problem we need to deal with? A problem bigger than anything we've ever seen before. I have something you need to examine personally using your department's highest precision gene sequencing equipment. I need a full sequence and a complete elemental composition analysis. What could the Ministry of State Security find so difficult, he asked. I replied, a biological sample that likely doesn't belong on Earth. Send me the address. I'll go personally with my team to collect it. But I wasn't taking any chances with this. That won't be necessary. I'll bring it to you myself. Thank you, he said, his voice turning serious. I took the briefcase recovered from the neighborhood and headed out. It was secured with an HNI pin lock containing the mystery. I moved through layer after layer of security checkpoints, passing through high-pressure disinfection tunnels. Finally, we entered the P4 Biosafety Laboratory. I handed over the case and nodded. The lead scientist, Pim, put on double gloves to handle it personally. He began the process with steady hands, using a high-precision robotic arm to maintain total isolation. He extracted a tiny sample from the biological bag. The sample was immediately processed for the university's review, fed into a battery of high-tech scanning instruments. We were looking for the energy signature hidden at its core. The full genome sequencer, the pride of the national health system, roared to life. The mass spectrometer's laser began its work, scanning the sample without a second's pause. Minister Wang Qin stood there, staring silently out the window. He watched from the observation deck, unable to decipher the data stream. But he knew how to read people. As the analysis progressed, the expressions on the faces of the lead lab biologists began to shift. They went from professional seriousness to intense curiosity and then to pure confusion. Then, it turned into total shock. Finally, they just stared at the screen with their mouths hanging open. It was as if they had forgotten how to breathe. Chen Yiping marched quickly toward the console. He reached the main terminal and pulled the raw data files himself. His fingers flew across the keys, rapidly zooming in on the data points. A thin layer of sweat broke out on his forehead. Finally, the lead scientist stopped moving. The cursor on the screen went still. He slowly lifted his head, looking at Minister Wang Chun through the protective glass. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His voice trembled as he spoke. Minister Wang, you need to come in here and see this for yourself. Wang Chun stepped through the heavy doors. He stared at the structural diagram on the central monitor. 3 molecular chains were intertwined in a way never seen before. This is its DNA model, the scientist whispered. It was a stable, natural, and perfect triple helix. Every living thing on our blue planet has 2 strands. A double helix. But this was triple. What could this possibly mean? It means that from the most basic code of life, this thing doesn't belong to the same system as us. And what about this? I asked, pointing to a reading. Unknown elements, the scientist replied. We have identified at least 3 brand new discoveries. Entirely new stable elements created from the structure of this specific sample. None of them are on the periodic table. Hearing this, Wang Chun looked like his world was spinning. He looked as if he'd been struck by a sledgehammer, right in the skull. The contents of the letter I sent flooded back into his mind without warning. Different life codes, different physical rules. Chin, Wang Chun barked, snapping back to reality. Prepare the most detailed report of your career. Immediately, send it to me through the highest level encryption channel we have. Everything that has happened here today, every scrap of data, every person involved, everything is now classified as a top-level state secret. Until you receive my direct orders, no one is permitted to leave this building. Thank you. Thank you. This is Wang Chun, he said into the phone. Connect me immediately to hotline number 1. Emergency. Maximum priority level. I repeat, maximum level. He looked out the window at the glowing city, the pedestrians on the street below, the crowds pouring out of the subway station, the silhouette of a delivery driver rushing past. Everyone was living their lives in peace, stuck in their usual routines. None of them had any idea that a threat capable of overturning their entire world had already arrived in silence. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. A massive, oval mahogany conference table filled the room. Every top official from China's key departments was present. Not a single person showed any sign of exhaustion. There was only a tense silence, the calm before the storm. Standing next to the massive screen, academic Chen Aiping was presenting and analyzing the data. He briefed the high-ranking officials on the test results. Then Wang Chun, carrying the weight of his experience, stood up with a grim intensity and stepped forward. He began the analysis of the findings. First, we can basically confirm the existence of another world. Second, this world possesses a power system called magic. It is highly likely that its foundation is built on a complete set of physical rules, entirely new ones. Thank you. Within 10 years, they will target Earth as their primary objective for invasion. Fourth, our citizen, Lin Fan, is currently our only source of information and our only turning point. Fifth, the time remaining for Lin Fan to receive the relief supplies. Can we immediately verify the 2-way transfer of information mentioned in the letter? This is the best opportunity to verify the truth of his ability. And the only chance we have this time is for the government to establish an effective connection with Comrade Lin Fan. Right now, in the Dragon Academy of Sciences laboratory, the leather bag from the other world was placed inside a quartz vacuum chamber. All real-time monitoring feeds were pulled up on the cameras. They transmitted directly to the large screen in the main conference room. Inside that conference room, the only sound left was the rhythm of the room, the tick-tock of the clock on the wall. When the second hand finally gave me the chance to see the moment, it hit the final mark of time. The agreed-upon time had arrived. That bag filled with flour and filled with hope vanished. It simply blinked out of existence. Every sensor reading hit 0 at that exact same instant. A collective gasp immediately echoed through the conference room. The other world really does exist. Does the dimensional rift actually exist? And does the threat it represents exist too? Yes, we cannot leave the fate of our civilization to the mercy of the enemy. I am the only dagger plunged into the enemy's gut, their only eyes and their only hand. As of now, the Otherworld Strategic Command is established. Support Comrade Lin Fan. Give him everything, no matter the cost. Soon, the final resolution echoed through the air. It filled the entire conference room. National Health Minister Wang Chun will act as Commander-in-Chief. Gather the best of the best. Bring in every top expert in the country. Integrate the resources from every relevant department. Their mission is singular. Mobilize the power of the entire nation. For the next 10 years, work through that tiny channel that opens every 3 days, with a strict limit of only 500 grams. They must arm their only vanguard in the other world. At this point, I can't even remember how many days it's been since I had a real meal. The burning hunger in my stomach feels like invisible hands clawing at my internal organs. Every second feels like it's crawling slowly over my frayed nerves. Right then, Captain Barton approached me. Lin Fan, that clay pot of yours only covers 5 days of your lodging fees. Counting today, you have 2 days left. If you can't pay the fee for your stay after those 2 days, you know the rules of Blackstone City, don't you? Hope and despair tore at me like 2 giant beasts. They're clawing frantically at my heart. But fortunately, the countdown is finally over. 72 hours of endless torment have come to an end. It's time. I focus my consciousness and dive deep into the recesses of my mind. I quickly lock onto the coordinates of the pigskin bag. But the moment I sense it clearly, my heart sinks. Why have the coordinates of the bag shifted? Is my mother in danger? Or did she just throw the bag away? I suppress my anxiety and reach out. I pull the pigskin bag through the void. Thank God, there's something in here. I impatiently tear the bag open. The scent of clean, pure wheat instantly floods my nose. This isn't the smell of coarse, dusty grains, mixed with the foul odors of this wasteland. This is the unmistakable taste of abundance, the taste of my hometown. The quality of this flour is incredible. It's many times better than anything I imagined. My mother took my words to heart and went out of her way to find the very best. But just as I'm about to head back to the house, I reach my hand deep into the flour. My fingers brush against something with a completely different texture. It's a piece of paper, extremely thin and smooth. It's light, yet durable, with clear and formal typography printed across the top. One striking line stands out. Comrade Lin Fan, China trusts you. The moment I see that word, comrade, I understand everything immediately. My mother didn't just choose to believe me. She reported this entire matter to the officials. And those officials chose to believe in me, a person in another world. 3 years of starvation and the crushing loneliness of fighting in despair. In this moment, I finally found a way out for all the bitterness and helplessness. It all transforms into a torrent of heat rising to my eyes. I grip that thin sheet of paper as if I'm holding the entire world in my hand. I'm no longer a wandering soul because a great motherland is standing right behind me. After calming my nerves, I quickly begin planning my next move. First, I carefully poured most of the flour back into the bag. I hid it in the hole under my bed and sealed it with a wooden board. I took the remaining third and wrapped it in a clean cloth. I tucked the bundle securely against my chest. Without wasting a second, I walked straight out of the house. I headed toward the bustling streets of Blackjack City. My target was the highest quality bakery in town, Golden Wheat Fragrance. Stop right there, a voice barked. This is the exclusive Golden Wheat Fragrance. It's no place for someone of your kind. I didn't give him a second of my attention. Instead, I simply shoved past him and kept walking. The clerk and a noble lady nearby let out gasps of shock. The crowd around us began to stare, their eyes filled with curiosity and judgment. Slowly, I placed the cloth-wrapped bundle directly onto the main counter. Then, right in front of everyone, I pulled back the edges of the fabric. The moment they saw that pure white flour, it was pure, without a single trace of grit or husk. In this world, such purity was unheard of. The entire bakery suddenly fell into a heavy, stunned silence. Even the air itself seemed to stand still. What's going on? Who dares to cause trouble in my shop? The owner, Yeel, stomped out from the back room. He took one look at my ragged clothes, and his face twisted in disgust. He opened his mouth, ready to tear into me with a lecture. He looked like he wanted to throw me out himself. But in the very next second, his gaze was pulled downward, drawn to the dazzling white glow on the counter. The rage on Yeel's face froze instantly. He rushed to the counter and stared intensely at the pile of powder. Flour this white, it's impossible, he whispered. He carefully reached out with his fat, trembling hand. He took a tiny pinch as if he were handling a sacred treasure. It was fine, silky, and perfectly smooth. It felt light, almost weightless against his skin. There really isn't a single impurity in this, he gasped. Thank you, I said, keeping my voice steady. However, Yeel was clearly trying to suppress something. He hid the ecstasy in his heart and spoke with a fake, forced calm. The quality is fine, but there's very little here. I'll give you 60 coins for the lot. 60 copper coins for all of it. Hearing that price, the regular customers nearby gasped. The onlookers around me started whispering and making a scene. 60 copper coins was enough to feed a family of 3 black bread for a week. But I just watched his little performance without saying a single word. Then, I silently reached out my hand. I didn't argue. I simply started sweeping the flour off the counter and back into my bag. When he saw my reaction, Yeel's heart skipped a beat in panic. Wait, little brother. We can talk about this. If you're not happy with the price, we can negotiate. Everything has a price that can be discussed. 1 silver coin for the whole thing, or 100 coppers. This is a total robbery. I thought, knowing that with 100 copper coins, you could buy a low-grade cat-eared slave. Pay up, or I'm leaving. I snapped. No, wait, he cried out. He knew if this flour was turned into bread for the nobility, the profits would be absolutely astronomical. Fine, it's a deal. Here are your 100 copper coins. I counted every single one to make sure the amount was right. Then I grabbed the money bag, turned around, and walked out. With this massive sum of money in my hand, I didn't head back to my shack. Instead, I went straight to the market patrol station. A short while later, as I stepped out of the patrol office, I finally let out a long breath of relief. Because starting today, I am finally safe, at least for now, inside Black Rock City. And the next step is simple. It's time to sound the horn for my counteroffensive. Thank you, I whispered to the wind. This is everything. I really made this. Boss, what is this? What kind of masterpiece have I been spending my time on? This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in this world. It's like something straight out of a holy book. This aroma, it's literally pulling at my soul. I looked out at the dark crowd gathered in front of the door. My heart began to beat wildly against my chest. Then, carrying a tray of fresh bread, I walked toward the front of the shop. I stepped out into the light, and I held one of the loaves high for everyone to see. The freshly baked white bread of hope, crafted with only the finest ingredients, handmade by me, limited quantity. There are only 10 available. I want to buy one. How much for one? Someone shouted. 1 loaf of the white bread of hope costs 30 copper coins, I replied. 30 copper coins. That's enough money to live on for an entire month. Why is it so expensive? Someone grumbled. Move, everyone get out of the way. I want 3 of them. Keep the change. My assistant, Yeel, clumsily handed over the 3 loaves with deep respect. He stared down at the 3 shining silver coins in his palm. Then he looked back at the 7 remaining masterpieces on the tray. Yeel's heart was instantly flooded with pure ecstasy. I'm rich. I've finally hit it big, he thought. Meanwhile, at the manor, the snacks were delivered as ordered. Viscount Du Bois sat regally in a chair with gilded armrests. With a look of total indifference, he picked up a loaf at random. But the moment that bread touched his tongue, his entire body froze. How could something this delicious even exist in this world? Was this the actual taste of paradise? In the next second, all of his aristocratic poise and composure shattered. He began stuffing the bread into his mouth with frantic, desperate bites. In just a heartbeat, it was over. He had devoured all 3 loaves in the blink of an eye. As the sensation of extreme bliss slowly faded, his brain finally started working again. In the next second, all of his poise and aristocratic manners completely crumbled away. He shoved the bread into his mouth frantically, stuffing his face with massive bites until all 3 loaves were gone. As that sensation of extreme bliss slowly began to fade, Du Bois's brain finally started to function. Once again, the noble banquet is next month. If I serve my guests this kind of bread, they will all be shocked and green with envy. They'll beg me to sell it to them. Take me to that bakery. Immediately. I want to buy every single loaf in the shop. But, my lord, they only have 10 loaves in total in the entire store. 10. Prepare the carriage this instant. I will go see for myself. Who is the genius behind this? I thought to myself, thank you for the business. I watched the scene unfold with a smirk. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Your lordship, the Viscount, what an unexpected surprise. My humble shop is truly honored by your presence. Cut the nonsense. How much white bread do you have left in the shop? I'm buying it all. My lord, every loaf of white bread for today has already been sold. Listen to me, you fat pig. Tomorrow, I don't care how you manage it. You must have a fresh batch ready. The exact same bread, or you won't like what happens next. I will personally throw you out of the city gates to feed the wild animals. The ghouls will have a feast with your remains. The shopkeeper trembled, his face turning pale as a sheet. He looked like he was about to collapse right there on the floor. It's over. I'm finished. Please. I'm begging you. Brother Lin Fan, please. Please, you have to save me. Viscount Du Bois wants 10 loaves of that bread by tomorrow. If I don't have them, they'll throw me out of the city to feed the ghouls. And when that happens, Brother Lin Fan, I am begging you to help me. Just give me a little more of that special white flour. The kind white as snow. I'll pay you whatever you want. Anything. I looked at him and sighed. I found that batch of flour by chance in the city ruins. There's nothing left now. It's all gone. It's over. I'm a dead man. But it's not like there isn't a solution. You have a way? A solution? Please, tell me. What kind of solution? I can find a way to get more of that flour. But I have one condition. What is it? Name your price. As long as it saves my life, I'll agree to anything. Starting today, I want half the profits from every loaf of bread you bake. Every single one made with the flour I provide. Half the money comes to me. Half, but that's too much. If you think it's too much, then dealing with the authorities will be even harder. If you don't like the deal, then forget it. Wait, stop. I'll do it. I accept. Thank you, Brother Lin Fan. I looked at him coldly and pulled out a parchment. This is a magic contract witnessed by the God of Justice. He oversees all pacts, and if anyone breaks their word, their soul will be scorched by the fires of hell. Words are worthless in this world, so let's sign it. Thank you so much. With a sudden flash of light, the contract bound our souls together. The contract was officially sealed. The next day, Yi delivered 10 loaves of bread to Viscount Du Bois's mansion. Thank you so much. 3. He received 5 silver coins on the spot. The Viscount announced he would reserve 10 loaves every single day from now on. Thank you. This bread isn't just food anymore. It has transformed into a pure symbol of status. A luxury asset used for bragging rights in the high society circles of Blackrock City. I watched it all unfold. After a month of building up my initial capital, I now have over 100 silver coins in my pocket. But I'm not exactly celebrating. My teleportation talent hasn't improved at all lately. I'm still stuck with a limit of only 500 grams every 3 days. I know clearly that in this world, money is nothing more than a tool. If I can't improve my teleportation, I'm just an ant, no matter how much gold I have. If I want to fix this issue, I might need a talent from another world. It's time to tap into this world's power system. Thank you. What is this? A fireball spell. I pulled it from an adventure. The guy looked like he'd fallen on hard times. 30 silver coins, not a penny less. He wouldn't budge. 30 silver coins represented almost my entire weekly income. But I didn't hesitate for a single second to buy it. Do you have any mana crystals? 5 silver coins. Thank you. Back at my place, I couldn't wait to unroll that scroll. The fireball spell circuit, -2 units. But those mysterious patterns weren't exactly easy on the eyes. The symbols looked like scribbles that made my head spin. I tried to follow the circuits shown on the parchment, attempting to channel my mana through them, but nothing happened. Not a thing. Of course, if magic were this easy to master, then mages would be a dime a dozen in this world. But it doesn't matter if I can't learn it myself. I don't have to figure this out alone. I have China's entire top-tier research team backing me up. After that, I rushed down to the docks. I scoured every shop in the area. I spent a small fortune buying up every rare book I could get my hands on. Then I pulled out a pen and paper and started writing a letter. I explained the uses of this technology in great detail. I listed every item and all of my theories. Once the letter was finished, I tucked it away with the others. I grabbed the fireball spell scroll, the mana crystal, and those 3 books followed. I packed everything into a leather pouch made from a beast's hide. Thank you. You're welcome. These items were the keys to a collision between civilizations, the bridge between 2 different worlds. From this moment on, the signal for the counterattack has officially been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 10 transfers per month. I wonder what that thing is that Lin Fan says has the most value. Thanks for watching the video. Academician Chun. Let's begin. Understood. The magic scroll, the mana crystal. Start the analysis immediately. Thank you. Inform Minister Wang that this crystal emits an unknown type of energy particle. Its penetration is stronger than gamma rays. We tested every known shielding material, including lead plates thickened to 1,200 millimeters, but nothing can completely block its path. The strangest part is that its radiation energy level is extremely low. It produces no ionization effect on living tissue. It's like a soft light, but with super strong penetration power. We'll call it the mana particle for now. Stronger than gamma rays, yet completely harmless. 0 radiation damage. If we could only understand the principle behind this thing, it could potentially be used in the energy sector or for quantum communication. General Chun, the priority right now is figuring out how to help Lin Fan. What are the test results for the scroll? The scroll material is an unknown biological tissue. We've confirmed the DNA structure is a triple helix. The composition of the paint used to draw the runes is complex. It's unlike anything found in our world. We've analyzed the components and compared them to known substances. Once again, we've detected a trace element, one that remains completely unknown to science. I stared at the mysterious object, a scroll made from the skin of some beast. I started mapping out the next phase of my plan. These mysterious symbols are like keys to another world. I'll need linguists to decipher the logic of these runes. I'll need physicists to understand how these energies interact. I'll even need mathematicians to build the models. I'll even require the assistance of the most advanced AI. Reactivate the underground base immediately. Number 9. Restore all system functions. 12 hours. Start the clock. Initiate the security protocol. Set it to the highest level. Contact General Staff, Section 3. Transfer to Special Level 1. Summon 5 experts. I need professionals in ancient linguistics, semiotics, and physics, experts in quantum mechanics and materials science, and specialists in fluid dynamics and large-scale AI language models. Thank you. Thank you. Academician Lee. 2 men are outside with Ministry of National Security credentials. They say they're on an urgent, top-level mission. Thank you. Thank you. Professor So, we need your help. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Chief Engineer Tian, get in the car. This is an urgent mission. Under the cover of night, at Spark Base, military aircraft are on the move. Special transport planes take off in total silence. They're coming from every corner of the country, and they all have the same destination. Only one, the primary objective. An underground base outside Beijing that doesn't exist on any map, Spark Base. These brilliant minds represent the peak of human wisdom, the most advanced intellects in China. Security protocols have been tightened, united by the strong, unwavering will of our citizens, the will of the motherland. A battle of research begins, an unprecedented scientific investigation into the nature of magic. It officially starts right now. Thank you. 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 The entire hallway is packed with researchers in white lab coats. I even spotted several legendary figures who have reached the absolute top of their fields. People I had only ever seen on the news. There must be some kind of mistake, a massive error, standing in front of all these national talents, the best the country has to offer. My own little reputation feels like nothing. Giving this presentation feels like a total joke. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So you're Lin Fan? Quite young. Your mind must be sharp. Professor So, time is short, so let's not waste a second. Here is your task. You are to join that group over there. Your goal is to decipher what's up there, and do it as fast as humanly possible. This is a completely new language. We have the dictionary and the history, but there is no grammar book. The superhero is the grammar book. The Fuxia supercomputer has finished dismantling the system and completed the digitization. Now we need you all to reconstruct the grammatical rules. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Grammar model construction complete. Swinest. She was so excited her cheeks turned bright red. However, the moment the full translation appeared, it flashed across the big screen. The Beatles. The excitement in the room gradually faded away. The screen displayed the translation, Genesis of the Arch Titan. The beginning of ruin, magic depletion, and other strange terms followed. Which country's religious mythology is this supposed to be? Somehow, it feels more like a game design document. Is the government really running an operation this massive, just to translate some novel about my life? Or is this the mythology of another world? Thank you all for your hard work. We have one more task for you. and it's a difficult one. Bring it in. Thank you, thank you. They brought out a magic scroll, and the moment I saw it, the title triggered an instant, visceral reaction in me. My scalp began to tingle with a sharp chill. I thought the previous texts were just stories about me, just some absurd mythological tales. But right now, I can't look away. A suffocating sense of reality rushes over me. The magic itself, it's real. Is that other world real too? We aren't just pushing through some violent history. We aren't just researching myths, but an actual, living world. Everyone, get to work. Thank you. As Professor Zhou's voice trailed off, the text about the path was translated in an instant, but the content wasn't a simple explanation at all. Instead, it looked like a series of prose poems, nonsense verses. Along with it was a complete set of spell-casting syllables. They were ready to be recorded, but nobody actually knew what they were. No one knew what tone to use to chant them. The complex pattern covering most of the scroll is even more baffling. Faced with these symbolic images, our communication system has become completely useless. The entire project has ground to a halt for the first time. Thank you. I feel like this looks familiar to me. She's a former power grid engineer. She has a professional eye for various types of complex structural diagrams. The lines in that pattern vary, some thick and some thin. The nodes are both large and small. The student's arrangement is very important. The general layout seems chaotic, but it vaguely follows a peculiar kind of rule. On a whim, she overlaid this image with the distance diagram, mapping the energy flow of the power grid of ultra-high voltage from her thesis. Thank you. Suddenly, an idea exploded in my mind. What if this isn't a painting? What if it's a circuit diagram? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. These thick lines are the core of the strip. The main trunk lines, low impedance. The thin lines are the branches. They represent high impedance. These large nodes aren't just noise. They're transformers and capacitors. They're used to step the voltage up or down and store energy. I applied the theory of analysis. For electrical power systems, I began mapping out the magic pattern. The calculations started flying through my head. I ran them frantically against Ohm's law and the laws of physics. I even applied Kirchhoff's circuit laws. The experts watching me looked completely lost. Even those who were half asleep felt like they were falling behind. They couldn't keep up with my movements. Soon, the confusion on their faces shifted into pure shock. Swin entered a trance, completely forgetting the world around her. My calculation speed kept accelerating until it was a blur. Finally, the last piece fell into place. The final node was set. The entire calculation formed a perfect closed circuit. Every stream of energy converged exactly where it needed to be. It hit the stability threshold with surgical precision. It works. Does geological technology actually work here? I couldn't believe my eyes. Thank you. In that moment, Swin's eyes shone with an intensity I'd never seen before. I think we can finally call this a magic circuit. Thank you. From the moment those two words appeared, the concept of the magic circuit changed everything. Magic was no longer just some mysterious, untouchable power. It became an energy system that could be understood and analyzed. It could even be copied. Thank you. Thank you. The magic circuit has been officially cracked. This means we might actually be able to unleash magic back on Blue Star. We have completely reproduced the image and the entire calculation process from Dr. Swin and Fuxit. We also ran more than 10,000 million different simulations. The conclusion is final. The essence of this magic pattern is a mental system, an efficient system for energy conduction, energy amplification, and modeling. How is the research on this crystal coming along? Very little progress. 99% of the machine's components are identical to quartz crystal, but that remaining 1%, it consists of completely unknown elements. Its internal lattice structure is incredibly unique. It acts like a solid cage. We assume the magic particles from Earth are being trapped inside this cage. The problem is, we have no way to break it open. The scroll mentions exactly how to use this crystal, but the description is extremely vague. Thank you. It's full of phrases that sound almost religious. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Exactly. The lattice structure is the key. Sound waves of a specific frequency are what we need at the top of the chamber. They could be the key to this lock. I issued the order immediately. The atmosphere in the room turned electric. New technology throughout the lab hummed to life. Soon, an energy generator was cleared for use. A high-precision sound wave emitter was pushed into the chamber. It was aimed directly at the magic crystal. The linguists had already transformed the spell's syllables into audio waveforms. I started the test at a frequency of 32 Hz, low pressure, volume set to 90 decibels. Still no reaction. I adjusted the frequency, 5 Hz, increased the pulse rate, sound pressure to 110 decibels. Crank it up, switch to a square wave. Another failure. The crystal in the isolation chamber is still acting like a stubborn rock. It's ignoring every sound frequency we throw at it. Is it a translation error? Highly unlikely. The grammar model for the common tongue is over 97% accurate. A mistake in the syllable transcription is out of the question. Sound, spell, spirit. Professor So, the scroll. It doesn't mention the role of the individual. What about the one casting the spell? I found it. It says, the caster must hold the sacred stone and chant the words of the gods. That's likely where the problem lies. We've been using instruments to simulate the process, but we ignored the human element, the most important link. The sound wave might only be one part of the key. The other part is the bioelectric field. The cage only opens when a human body touches the crystal and recites the spell. The combination of both is the only way to unlock it. Prepare a human contact experiment immediately. I'll be the first test subject. Minister, this is far too dangerous, my team warned. I told them it was an order, and if anything happened to me, Academician Li would take command of the project. 10 minutes later, Wang Chun entered the testing chamber. He took a deep breath to steady his nerves. He reached out slowly, placing his palm flat against the cold surface of the crystal. He began to chant, Acne Segnester Plus. But even after 3 consecutive attempts, he couldn't feel a single spark of energy flow. Wang Chun didn't waste time and decided to swap in a different person. Soon, every national-level expert we had lined up and took turns entering the isolation room. One by one, they stepped up to the pedestal. They touched the crystal with their bare hands and recited the spell, but nothing happened. They completely cast aside their own safety. They ignored the risk of death, all just to overcome the final step of this magic. However, 2 hours later, most of the scientists had finished their attempts. The result was a total failure, without exception. The truth was right there in front of us, but there was a thin barrier we just couldn't break through. There was nothing wrong with the theory. The method we used to build the structure had been fully approved. Which part of the process did I get wrong? My name is Su Jinxue. I'm the youngest and most prominent expert in the field of entanglement and quantum communication. A few hours ago, a private jet picked me up and flew me in from Shanghai. When I arrived, I thought there was a major quantum project that needed my expertise. I was actually pretty excited about it. But upon reaching the city, I realized there was no one there. Standing here, I realized there was absolutely nothing for me. I felt like I was just an extra piece of the puzzle. The most brilliant minds in history were gathered in this place. Experts in physics, materials, and life sciences. Specialists in biology and energy. Even masters of linguistics and other niche fields. Every single one of them had a specific task to perform. But then there was me, the quantum entanglement guy. I didn't seem to fit into any of the active research areas. Then the realization hit me. When they were recruiting, they weren't being selective. Were they even sure what kind of professional talent they needed? They didn't. So during the recruitment process, they simply called in experts from every imaginable country. They covered every field just in case. It's clear now. I am the just in case. The one they happen to have no use for. Thank you, I muttered to myself. What are they even doing over there? I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like they're testing something. It looked like some kind of magic. Is this some international joke? I come from a declining Taoist family. As a child, my grandfather forced me to meditate with my legs crossed. He made me recite methods for guiding vital energy. As an adult, I studied every branch of life sciences I could find. I put every ounce of my strength into it. I wanted to use rigorous science to destroy those old myths. I wanted to prove those vague, insubstantial superstitions were fake. But after taking that long detour, I ended up here at the country's most important research base. And I'm seeing things that look exactly like what I saw back then. The same things my grandfather used to do. Dr. Tsukinso, it's your turn. My first instinct was to refuse. But seeing that undeniable look in the other person's eyes, I swallowed my words of rejection. Wang Chen obviously noticed my reluctance and lack of focus. He walked over and spoke with total seriousness. Dr. Su, I know you might have your doubts, but whether you believe it or not, once you go in, you must give your all to complete every step. Yes, I guarantee I will. I will complete the task. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Unite your spirit. The spirit, the pulse of the flame. But how am I supposed to concentrate my spirit? I'm a physicist who usually deals with formulas and data. However, just as I was feeling lost, a long-forgotten memory began to surface. It rose from the deepest corners of my mind. Mental stillness, total concentration, inner contemplation, outer perception. I tried to let go of my personal obsessions. I fought to empty my mind completely. I focused every ounce of my consciousness on my health. I felt it through the tips of my fingers touching the glass. Suddenly, the control system began to shift and move. Suddenly, a strange sensation surged from the tips of my fingers. My consciousness seemed to penetrate the hard outer layer of the glass. I established a direct connection with the ocean of energy inside. I can actually feel it. Acnes, Panasni. The moment the last word left my lips, I felt a slight heat on my fingertips. Kim Su snapped his eyes open. Outside the glass of the isolation chamber, Wang Chun also stood up. He bolted upright from his chair. Thank you. Damn, so that's it. Right above the palm of my left hand, a ball of pitch-black flame appeared. The reddish-orange glow emitted a soft light and heat. Dr. Su, stay calm. I tried to release the energy, but Kim Su's mind was a total mess. It was pure chaos, but the moment I turned around, I consciously pushed the flame toward the alloy target. The fire surged forward. It struck the metal with a hiss. I watched the surface begin to glow. The heat was intense. I didn't blink. Seeing this scene, everyone in the hall froze. The entire experimental wing fell into a heavy silence. No one dared to breathe. They just stared at the black flame in my hand. The power was undeniable. I wondered, what kind of mistake have I made now? But there was no time to think. This is a top-level emergency summons. I have orders to take you to a top-secret military fortress. The soldier's voice was cold and firm. My peaceful life was officially over. I haven't done anything wrong. Not in my entire life. My only sin was eating temple food as a kid, but that can't be it. Is this really serious enough for them to settle the score now? When they brought me to the central area, I gave my name immediately. I saw Sang Qingshuan and his granddaughter locked in a heated argument. Seeing her there made Sang Qingshuan's heart sink with an ominous feeling. She had brought me here, the living representative of feudal superstition. In a place crawling with scientists, the universe is supposed to be logical. Are they really going to use me as a negative example? To sacrifice at the altar of science? Leaders sang, I'm Wang Chun, the commander-in-chief here. The situation is urgent, so please, watch this video first. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a recording of fire control. Wang Chun handed over a tablet. Wang Chun handed the document over to Sang Qingshuan. The first page was a high-definition photo of an animal skin scroll. It was the magic scroll we call the fireball spell. The doctor had managed to master the ability through this very item. The file contained more than just the basic info found online. It held the original text, the translation of the scroll, and even historical diagrams. Physicists had even mapped out the energy structure of the magic circuit. The more Sang Qingshuan looked, the more solemn his expression became. The Tao follows nature, he muttered. Different paths leading to the same destination. The arts and pyrotechnics in my Taoist school scriptures were actually connected at a fundamental level. In our Taoist school, we call this thing a talisman, he explained. By itself, the object has no power. You could say it's just a form of dialogue, used to guide the casting of a spell. The caster uses their own spirit as a beacon. They guide the energy called ardor between heaven and earth by following this talisman. Finally, that energy is molded and manifested externally into the world. I see. Our world might simply be in an era of magical decline. In ancient times, humanity wasn't living in a void. The ardor between heaven and earth was incredibly dense back then, allowing the ancients to summon wind and rain. But as that energy dried up over time, sorcery became a spring without water, losing all its power. This realization hit everyone in the room like a bolt of lightning. It explained exactly why Taoist sorcery shared the same roots as magic from another world. Sang Qingshuan shook his head as he scanned the experimental records. He realized that whether it was the scroll itself or the previous tests conducted by these scientists, they had all hit a dead end. My friends, the humble Taoist began. I have a doubt that I must voice regarding our teachings. The higher path emphasizes that thought must follow the heart, for the law itself is born from the heart. A mantra is just a blessing. Energy is inherently lifeless, so you should be able to take it directly. Why bother talking to it? Isn't that putting the cart before the horse? The reason my granddaughter only succeeds after chanting isn't because the spell is magical. It's not about the words themselves. It's because she lacks skill and can't focus her spirit without the help of a chant to enter the right state. In short, the spells and gestures recorded in history are just training wheels. And that includes the instructions on this scroll. They are nothing more than auxiliary methods to help beginners. A way to use self-suggestion to trigger the power. They are the crutches a child uses when they first learn to walk. After saying that, Sang Qingshuan decided to demonstrate it himself. I watched him enter the isolation room and look at the magic crystal. He didn't even touch it. He just held his palm suspended in the air, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. He was visualizing the magic circuit in his mind, guiding it with pure intent. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the crystal. A bolt of lightning surged forth, crackling with raw, untamed energy. It slammed into the wall with a deafening boom. The air in the lab grew heavy with the scent of ozone. The scientists stood frozen, their mouths agape at the display. Sang Qingshuan lowered his hand, his expression calm and unshaken. Holy crap, someone whispered in the back. Wang Chun stared at the scorched alloy wall, his heart hammering against his ribs. There was no chant. There were no gestures, and not even physical contact was required. This meant that magic, or rather, this transcendental power, was being decoded. It was being standardized right before our eyes. Soon, we might even be able to mass-produce it. Right now, this energy control system is just that, a system. But a crazy idea starts taking root in Wang Chun's mind. I watched him call for a meeting. Everyone gathered in the central conference room. He didn't waste any time. I heard him announce that we are completely abandoning all research on spells and gestures. Every related resource is being transferred immediately. Our new objective is to develop a standardized system, a scientific training program for spellcasting designed for ordinary people. I don't care what methods are used, whether they are Taoist, Buddhist, or purely scientific. I just want one specific result. I want an ordinary soldier with zero background to learn how to control fire in the shortest time possible. With that single order from Wang Chun, the entire research direction of the base underwent a radical shift. An unprecedented siege, merging metaphysics and science, was officially launched. And so, batch after batch of specialists were flown into the base on private planes. Internal boxing masters from Mount Gudong, hidden in seclusion for decades. Heirs of the celestial masters. From Longhu Mountain, experts in the art of talismans. Virtuous monks living in isolation deep within the mountains. Masters of Zen meditation who truly understand the essence of life. figures that usually only exist in legends. But now, by the will of the nation, they gathered for this extraordinary cause. If the heart moves, the mind moves. If the mind moves, energy flows. The heart is the key. I watched a monk argue that concentration is everything, a heart as still as water. No, 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 a scientist countered. According to my brainwave maps, a synchronous surge appeared specifically in the V-band of the prefrontal cortex. The young physicist tried to unify their spiritual views with hard science. The group of elders surrounded him and lectured him for 3 straight hours. Finally, with King Swan acting as the general advisor, the research got back on the right track. The base shifted its focus back toward the Air Force's needs. Everything moved into an alpha-level state of operation. The speed was incredible. Every practitioner was hooked up to a high-precision brainwave sensor. They pushed themselves until they reached a state of total desperation. They were pushing the limits of spellcasting. Every nerve impulse signal was being tracked. Active signals from the cerebral cortex were captured and turned into data. That data flowed continuously into the core of the Fuxi AI supercomputer. The computing team had a massive task ahead of them. They had to sift through an ocean of ancient knowledge. They filtered the noise and extracted the core wave model. The goal was to find the most stable brainwave pattern for casting spells. I watched the results come in and thought, finally, I knew we were close. We found it, the ultimate key to success. It all resides within the mind of the caster. It depends on whether they can construct a mental structure, a perfect 3-dimensional image of the spell's content. It must be perfectly consistent with the magic circuit and highly stable. The clearer the mental image, the higher the power and success rate. Science had finally proven the theory that magic is born from the heart. I realized we had to build everything based on this. This discovery led the engineering group to a massive technological breakthrough. The software team acted immediately to develop the new interface. It was the system's new training software, a neural feedback meditation assistant. All the user had to do was hit the start button. They put on a headset equipped with brainwave sensors. It was time for contemplation training. The system captured brainwave signals in real time and compared them to the tech. It checked them against the standard spellcasting models in the database. The higher the match, the more harmonious the audio in the headset became. If they were off, the audio turned into static, a grating, annoying noise in their ears. This system ingeniously simplified everything. It turned boring meditation training into a physical experience. New apprentices no longer needed to struggle with comprehension. They didn't have to decipher those mysterious mental techniques. They just played it like a game, constantly adjusting their mental state. They were searching for the answer, the most pleasant, correct frequency. In that moment, magic was officially knocked off its pedestal. 1 week later, I was back in the experimental lab. Subject number 1 was a young soldier handpicked from the Civil Guard. I watched as he stepped into the isolation room. He had 0 basic cultivation training and didn't even know what meditation was. He only had 24 hours of training with the assistance system, but it worked. He succeeded, and in that moment, everyone in the room embraced. They were cheering and rejoicing, completely losing their professional composure. Wang Chen looked at the young soldier with a calm face, but his tightly clenched fists betrayed the raw emotion in his heart. We had completely cracked the secrets of the church's power. The mysteries of magic and divinity were laid bare. We had subjected it all to cold, hard reverse engineering. We turned it into a standardized, reusable skill, something we could apply and promote across the board from this moment on. China now had one more trump card up its sleeve, a new weapon to face that unknown world. Just one more card in our hand. During the final test, Lopez's magic crystal from the other world flickered. It finally exhausted its last spark of energy and turned into a dull, desperate gray. It was just an ordinary gray stone now, but it didn't matter anymore, because China had already completely mastered the principles of the fireball spell. Before the next transfer cycle arrived, Wang Chen personally supervised the packing of the new aid supplies. Flour, medicine, energy bars. These basic supplies were still on the list, but right in the center of the package, they placed something entirely new. This time, it would become a defining moment. China was finally going to give Lin Fan something he could actually use. Real, effective support. Thank you. Thank you so much. I looked at the massive stacks of refined flour piled in the corner. I saw the roasted meat left on the table and realized something. My life was much better now than when I first arrived. In this godforsaken place they called Blackstone City, I was finally treated like a human being. I didn't have to worry about my next meal or being mistreated anymore. I no longer feared being killed by the city guards on a whim. But I knew this achievement wasn't as easy as it looked. It's nothing compared to the war between civilizations coming in 10 years. I'm still just a nobody who's barely managed to gain a foothold. To truly influence this world, to move those almighty gods, and to survive the catastrophe waiting in my future, I can't fight for my country's survival just by making trades. In this life, that simply isn't enough. I must build my own power, a force strong enough to shake the world free from the dominion of the gods. But that's for later. Right now, the most important thing is making sure I don't get stuck in this tiny Blackstone city. I need to get out. I have to go to bigger places and reach out to a much wider world. To achieve that, I have to master magic. I need the power to protect myself. I need the power to explore. It's crucial. In this world, mages are the most respected profession there is. But so far, I've only mastered the most basic magic. As a mage, you're treated with respect wherever you go. I'll no longer be a commoner who can be slaughtered on a whim. With my limited talent, trying to uncover the secrets of magic alone, it would take more than just a lifetime. It's an impossible dream. My only hope lies with my country. It's already been 12 long weeks. Ever since I sent that scroll, the one containing the secrets of life, the path to the Babylonian fireball spell. During this time, I've received 4 separate supply packages, but every time I open them, there's no translation to be found. No instructions on how to actually use the fireball. I'm starting to feel my luck running thin. I'm anxious, and the weight of it is starting to pull me down. I know the experts back home are doing everything they can, but they've hit a wall. This magic, it's far beyond the reach of Earth's current science. Way beyond. Who knows how long it will take to finally crack the code. All I can do is pray in silence that our scientists succeed. I need them to solve this as soon as possible. Time was ticking away, second by second, and then, it finally happened. The day scheduled for the next supply transfer arrived. My heart was pounding against my ribs, so I took a deep breath. I forced myself to stay calm and focused. I activated my talent. Material transfer and recovery. Initiate. I waited for the materials to materialize. A sudden flicker of energy flashed before my eyes. A package appeared out of thin air in the middle of my stone house. I didn't hesitate for a second. I practically lunged at it and tore the wrapping apart. I emptied the package quickly, finding several different items inside. There was a booklet, neatly printed on high-quality paper, and a strange-looking object that resembled a dinosaur toy. One of those popular ones you see everywhere. But then I saw the letter, and my gaze locked onto it immediately. I ignored everything else and reached for that envelope. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Minister Wang Chun. I ripped it open and scanned the contents, my eyes darting across the page. With this assistant and these instructions, I could finally master magic. It was a complete and total breakthrough. I stood there, completely and utterly stunned. All I had done for my country was help them translate the ancient scrolls. I just marked the difficult parts so they could study them at their own pace. But they responded by sending me a full set of specialized training gear. Everything I needed to advance was right in front of me. This went way beyond my wildest expectations. My eyes grew misty as I stared at the package. A surge of indescribable pride and admiration swelled in my heart. Others have to learn magic through raw talent and grueling, hard work. They spend their whole lives grinding away, struggling just to grasp the basics of these mysterious forces. But my homeland sent the tools straight to me. Isn't this basically a built-in cheat code? I thought, amazed by my country's power. Being backed by the full strength of my nation filled me with a new kind of power. It gave me an unshakable sense of confidence. I realized right then that I was no longer just a lonely traveler drifting across a vast sea. I wasn't fighting this battle all by myself anymore. Standing right there behind me was a nation with a superior mind and a terrifying level of intelligence. Their ability to execute was unmatched. I couldn't wait to grab the booklet sitting by the door. The cover was printed with bold, heavy letters. Non-incantation spellcasting training manual. Standard edition, Volume 1, Fireball Technique. Just reading the title gave me an inexplicable feeling. It felt strangely familiar, yet carried a heavy air of absolute rigor. I quickly flipped through the contents of the manual. It didn't contain any of those complex, obscure magical terms. Everything was written in plain language that was easy to grasp. Even the more difficult concepts were broken down for me. Things like mental focus, brainwave synchronization, and the construction of visualization models. They were all paired with crystal-clear diagrams explaining the magic circuits. I learned how the headset detected and guided my brainwaves. It led the student through meditation to build a structured thought system, a stable, reproducible 3D blueprint inside my own mind. The more I read, the more excited I got. Magic wasn't just mystery, it was science. Without a doubt, this is the true face of magic. I finally had a revelation about that scroll. The old man sold me back then. That black market deal was a total scam. It was just an incomplete, garbage version compared to what my country has given me. I felt a surge of secret joy and couldn't wait a second longer. I reached out to grab a magic crystal. I put on the portable headset, and a soft white noise immediately filled my head. It hummed right against my ears. It felt like a gentle caress, soothing my very soul. I leaned into the synergy of the device. I followed the manual's instructions and closed my eyes. I began to construct the mental blueprint. I visualized the complex magic circuit diagram for the fireball technique. This was so much more efficient than my clumsy, desperate attempts from before. Whenever my focus started to slip or my mind wandered, I forced myself to concentrate just a little harder. The image in my mind grew sharp as the white noise pulsed. The sound in my ears immediately became an ear of the mind. It turned into a pleasant melody that blared louder whenever I got distracted. The noise would fade, and I felt like a master of my own mind again, guided by that constant white noise feedback. The speed at which I, Lint Fan, entered the state was unbelievable. It felt like I was playing a hyper-realistic VR game. But this wasn't a simulation. This game was being played directly inside my consciousness. I dove in completely, tirelessly adjusting every nuance of my mental state. I strained to make the magic circuit in my mind grow clearer and more defined. I kept my focus steady and stable. 8 hours passed in what felt like a lifetime. Then, I felt a click in my brain, like a switch being flipped. Everything surged to life at once. A strange energy fluctuation flooded my spiritual world. I snapped my eyes open, my vision blurred with tears of disbelief and pure joy. I instinctively reached my hand out. I reached my hand toward a clay cup sitting in the corner. I concentrated my mind, and then, a low hum. A ball of fire detached itself from the air. It was solid, burning, and intense. It formed instantly right in the palm of my hand. That fireball was pure gold. It glowed bright red like a miniature sun, radiating a terrifying heat. I took aim and tried to throw it. It didn't make a single sound. It shot forward silently and struck the target with precision. The broken clay cup was only 2 meters away. I watched the impact like a man possessed. There was only a faint, sizzling sound of burning. The cup turned a glowing, angry red. It softened and began to deform rapidly. The change happened right before my eyes. It collapsed into a puddle. It was smoking magma, flowing slowly across the floor until it settled. But I, Lin Fan, could only stare in shock. I lowered my hand and stared at the puddle on the ground. The lava was still smoking there in the south corner. A wave of joy washed over me, but it wasn't just simple happiness. In that instant, a realization hit me. It surged through my entire body. Finally, I had mastered it. This wasn't just basic magic. I knew this was no game. To others, it might look like a simple fireball. But to me, this fireball is the cornerstone of my entire plan. It is the most powerful weapon life has ever given me for my future. With this power, I am no longer bound to my homeland. I am no longer trapped in Blackstone City. I finally have the confidence I need to survive this dangerous world. I can survive and explore as my heart desires. Chapter 21. Hiring a bodyguard. The warrior woman. After the war ended, I began my search for protection. I had already mastered the fireball spell. I could feel the raw, elemental energy vibrating within my own skin. It took me a long time to finally calm my racing heart. I stared at that puddle of Arsalan lava, smoldering right there on the floor. I felt a strange itch deep inside me, a power descending directly into my soul. I needed to properly test this new application of everything I had just learned, but I couldn't just keep burning things in a room that didn't even have running water. To simulate real combat, I needed a more realistic trial. I needed to push myself. I needed to see what I was made of. I needed to know if I could survive. I needed a real target. I had to prove to myself my own survival capacity and the true lethality of my magic. I decided to spend a night alone outside the city walls. I wanted to experience the cruelty of the wild firsthand, and I wanted to master the fireball in the heat of a real fight. I was well aware of the extreme risks of walking through the wild alone. Even with the city's influence, the wilderness is a realm of its own. Monsters there are wild, untethered from the world of men. It's a treacherous place where one mistake is fatal, but for my future, I had to face it. The risk had to be taken. I couldn't hide behind these city walls forever. I had to adapt to the laws of this world and sharpen my strength. But heading out completely alone was a recipe for disaster. It just wasn't prudent, so I weighed my options carefully. I needed an assistant, but the city caravan wouldn't head south for another 3 months. Not until winter arrived. I couldn't wait that long to leave. I had to take the initiative, so I made a decision. I would hire a bodyguard, even though I knew the price would be steep. A night's protection outside the walls would cost a fortune. They'd be risking their lives in monster territory, but I needed this test to be safe. It was worth the gold. Money is important, but my life is worth more. The next morning, I walked into the Pixel City Adventurers Guild with a bag of coins. The hall was packed and reeked of cheap ale. The air was thick with sweat and the faint, metallic tang of blood. Groups of adventurers stood around in worn leather armor, clutching their blades. They huddled together in small circles of 3. Their voices were loud and boisterous. They were either arguing over yesterday's loot or bragging about their strength. Each one claimed their deeds were legendary, but I knew better. The massive bulletin board was completely plastered with notices. The tasks ranged from finding lost livestock to dirty grunt work. Some even asked to clear out the magical pests breeding in the city mines. I walked straight toward the board, ignoring the noise around me. I pulled a silver coin from my pocket and flicked it onto the wood. I handed it to the receptionist who was dozing off behind the counter. "I want to post a mission," I said, waking him up. He snatched the money and asked for details without even looking up. "What's the job?" he grunted. "Protection for 1 night outside the city walls. The reward is 5 silver coins." I kept my voice calm and steady as I spoke. The man finally snapped his head up and stared directly at me. He looked at me like I was some kind of freak. 5 silver is a fortune for city work, but surviving a night outside is a different story. That was a different story entirely. The dangers lurking outside the city walls aren't visible to the naked eye, and they aren't easily scared off by 5 measly silver coins. Still, if he had a problem with it, he didn't say a word. Rules were rules. He scribbled the mission onto a parchment and grabbed a mallet. He moved to the most visible spot on the bulletin board. He hammered it into place with a sharp, heavy thud. 5 silver coins to spend a night outside the city. A man named Louis stood nearby and watched the whole thing. He looked at me like I was insane. Did I think the outskirts were some playground? Like it was just some stroll through a backyard? He probably thought I was trying to buy a life for 5 silver coins. Suddenly, the sound of a bat's wings fluttered through the air. Low murmurs and suppressed laughter rippled through the crowd. Everyone gathered around the bulletin board to see the new post. People were coming and going, and dozens of adventurers spotted my notice. I just stood there, waiting. Most gave it a look of pure contempt, shaking their heads with disdain before moving on. They were looking for safer bets, missions with a better payoff. They wanted a better risk-to-reward ratio. For most experienced adventurers, that price was a joke. 5 silver coins, it wasn't nearly enough. Not to risk their lives outside the city walls. They valued their necks. They wanted more than a measly handful of change. I stood there, watching their reactions with my own eyes. I had already seen this coming. I knew the price was a bit low. I took a moment to think it over, weighing my options. I walked back to the counter and told him to raise the reward to 10 silver coins. I spoke in a calm, steady tone. The other adventurers went silent. The receptionist did as I asked, glancing at me with a strange look. 10 silver coins. The new offer was posted for the world to see. It sat there on the bulletin board, gleaming. The adventurers who were heading back into the city stopped in their tracks. The crowd began to stir. 10 silver coins. Now that was a serious price. The atmosphere grew tense. But it was still a night outside the walls, and nobody knew what was waiting out there. You never know what you'll run into in the dark. Still, this amount was finally enough to be tempting. It was a considerable sum, enough to make a few men reconsider. A group of adventurers started to gather around, whispering among themselves. They stood there in front of the bulletin board, whispering and debating the risk. But those veterans were looking for a different kind of payoff. They were experienced enough to value their lives over a few coins. They took one look at the notice and shook their heads. Then they turned around and walked away. Just as I began to think my efforts were in vain, I was already weighing whether to hike the price again. I'll accept it. A clear, steady voice rang out from the middle of the crowd. It carried a firmness that didn't allow for any doubt. I turned my head to see who it was. I looked straight toward the source of the voice. I saw a young female adventurer standing off to the side. She was keeping her distance from the rest of the pack. She walked calmly toward the bulletin board. She looked about 20 years old. She was wearing a suit of tight-fitting leather armor. A weapon was strapped to her waist, a long, gleaming sword. Her hair was tied back. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail. It revealed a clear, open forehead. Her eyes were bright and sharp. "My name is Isla," she said, stepping forward. Her voice was low, but it was filled with a confidence that offered a glimmer of hope. "I'm a graduate of the Warrior Academy." I watched her closely as she claimed to be an elite warrior. She looked very young, with a touch of academic naivety still on her face. But her build was lean and her movements were precise. She really did have the bearing of a high-level fighter. I found myself forming a very good first impression of her. Even though I'm a newcomer to the city guild, I have plenty of experience fighting in the wilds outside the walls. I know the habits of the local magical creatures, Isla continued. There was a distinct hint of pride in her tone. I can guarantee that common monsters won't even touch me. Inside, I was secretly celebrating. My luck was actually turning around. This was exactly what I needed. I didn't expect that for the price of just 10 coins, 10 silver coins, I could hire a guard who actually seemed reliable. Even if she did call herself a newcomer, she had the foundation of an elite warrior and a clear sense of confidence. With that kind of attitude, she should be able to handle any unexpected situations that we might run into out there. "You're hired," I said. I gave her a firm nod of approval. Her confidence during this trial was exactly what I needed to see. My own confidence about heading outside the city walls began to grow too. A look of pure relief washed over Isla's face. She took the advance payment I handed over with a steady hand. Then, she began to walk me through her strategy. She gave me a brief rundown of her knowledge of the surrounding area. Knowing the environment outside the city is a massive advantage for survival. She explained the layout of the lands surrounding the city walls. She also detailed the common habits of the local wildlife. She made a point to emphasize her knowledge of the magical creatures. She assured me she was familiar with several hidden paths and safe zones located near the Blackstone perimeter. Blackstone City. I realized she was actually the real deal. We agreed to head out of the city the following night. I went back home to begin the final preparations for this adventure. I knew deep down that this wasn't just some simple trial run. This was the official starting point for my future. My grand master plan was finally in motion. I couldn't afford to make a single mistake. But there was more to it than that. Last night, I had paid another visit to the black market. I stocked up on a massive pile of magic power crystals. Even though they were low level, I did the math. I carefully counted the 24 magic crystals in my palm. They were more than enough to keep me moving. They could fuel my magic for at least 30 hours of intense combat. I could cast fireball spells continuously without stopping. That gave me a level of combat endurance. That was honestly pretty terrifying. I carefully tucked away the antibiotics I had brought with me. They were straight from Blue Star, along with some liquid nutrients. I hid the rest of my supplies throughout my house and inside my clothes. I even lined the inner layers of my belt with them. These items were my ultimate trump card for surviving in this world. I couldn't let anyone see them. I wouldn't use them unless it was absolutely necessary. Especially those antibiotics. In a world where medical knowledge is this primitive, those pills are basically a miracle cure that can cheat death. I checked my gear one last time to make sure there were no mistakes. Chapter 22. The Job. A mage seeking death is a mage who finds it. As night began to fall, The towering walls of Blackstone City caught the last rays of sunlight. The city gates groaned shut with a heavy, dull thud. The world inside was now completely cut off from the world outside. Lara and I met up in a thicket not far from the city outskirts. I stared out into the vast distance ahead of us. I felt a rush of excitement, mixed with a sharp edge of nerves. The name itself carries a chilling meaning. The ground beneath my feet isn't flat like it is inside the city. Wind-eroded cracks everywhere look like open mouths, ready to devour all life. A foul, indistinct wind carries the faint, peeling scent of blood. The earth gives off a peculiar odor, the musk of some unknown creature. The sky above is much brighter than in the city, but the moon glows a faint crimson. It stains the entire land below. Everything is coated in a strange, unsettling color. Mr. Linfan, we need to find a safe place to camp now. Lara's voice was barely a whisper. She moved with her hand pressed low, her body shifting with practiced ease. She had the raw caution of a survivor who knows that one mistake means death. Every single step she took was silent. Her eyes scanned the surrounding darkness while her ears remained sharp. She leaned in slightly, catching every subtle sound. The wind carried her words. I explored this area during the day. If we walk east for about half an hour, we'll find it. There's a natural cave hidden right in the center of the ridge. It's well hidden and should keep us safe. It'll help us avoid most of the monsters that hunt at night. She spoke as she walked, her voice low and steady. It was the tone of a true professional. The most important part of surviving the night is staying hidden. Monsters hunt using scent and sound, so we have to mask our smell. And we have to be silent. Don't make a sound, and don't even think about a fire. Light only attracts trouble. Unnecessary trouble, so we stay in the dark tonight. I followed close behind her. I watched this young warrior move with precision. She was elite, and I couldn't help but feel impressed. She was young, but she possessed every quality of a seasoned pro. She was exactly the kind of partner I needed for this trip. This was a real-world combat test. I didn't mind her taking the lead at all. I appreciate the advice, I said. But the truth was, my goals were a bit different than hers. What I was planning and what Lara expected. They weren't exactly the same thing, miss. I stopped in my tracks, my voice low but steady. Lara stopped immediately and turned back toward me. She looked at me with pure curiosity as I said, "We aren't hiding tonight." I looked her straight in the eye and made my intentions clear. My goal wasn't to avoid the monsters, but to be found by them. I needed to test my own survival limits under pressure. Lara's eyebrows shot up, her bright eyes filled with total confusion. She stood there stunned for a few seconds before finally hesitating. "Mr. Linfan, what did you just say? You want the monsters to find us? Are you serious?" she asked, clearly thinking she had misheard me. I didn't blink. There wasn't a hint of a joke in my tone. I needed to know how I would perform in the face of real danger. I had to see if I could actually survive the night on my own. Lara frowned deeply at my words. She probably thought I was being delusional or maybe even suicidal. I could hear her whispering under her breath. What is going through his head? What is the point of this? Is he overestimating my abilities? Does he think I can protect him from everything as a rookie warrior? She was an elite warrior, that was true, but the monsters were just as real. Ordinary monsters couldn't hurt her, but this was different. She took her duty seriously. She was prepared to do everything in her power. But if I was hell-bent on this, there was nothing she could do to stop me. I was looking for death, and I was dragging her down with me. Her face showed more emotion than I had ever seen from her. Her expression darkened as the weight of it hit her. She even considered giving up right then and there. She knew exactly what would happen if she followed through. If she followed my instructions and actively lured the monsters toward us. She would be the only one standing between us and them. Protecting me while fighting off a horde was far beyond her job description. It was pushing her right to her breaking point. She wasn't omnipotent. She was just an elite warrior. And a recent graduate at that, fresh out of the academy. She had her own limits to worry about. She took a long, deep breath to steady herself. She struggled to maintain her composure. Then she looked me in the eye and spoke without hesitation. "Forgive my bluntness, Mr. Linfan, but given your recent demands, I can't do this. This exceeds the scope of my mission," she said, her tone laced with disgust. She hesitated for a second, then added, "Unless." She wanted me to increase her reward for taking such a massive risk. 10 silver coins simply weren't going to cover it. I looked at Gila and understood exactly what she was doing. She felt the danger of this mission was far too high for the current pay. From her perspective, this was a death sentence. Her reaction was understandable, but I simply shook my head calmly. "Miss Gila, our contract is very specific. It clearly stipulates that the state cannot renegotiate terms once agreed upon. The task description explicitly covers field training and combat. Did you not read it carefully? There is no room for extra pay." Gila's face froze instantly. She realized right then that she hadn't actually scrutinized the fine print. She thought this was just a common material gathering mission in the field. In her heart, she cursed her own inexperience for not checking every single term. The silence of reality served as a harsh lesson for her to gain experience. She let out a long, heavy exhale. She gripped the long sword at her waist tightly, even though she hadn't been given the chance to use it. Reluctance still flickered on her face, but her tone had returned to a forced calm. "Fine, Mr. Linfan, I understand. I will fulfill my duty. I noticed Gila's low morale and knew she wasn't the only one feeling the pressure. She was clearly unhappy, and I didn't want her doing this job half-heartedly. I thought about it for a moment and realized I needed to do a bit more. I had to give her a reason to be confident, so I pulled a small pouch from my chest pocket. The bag was bulging, filled with a large quantity of crystals. These were the magic crystals I had purchased back at the market. In the darkness of the night, they caught the surroundings. They reflected the moonlight, emitting a faint, ethereal glow. "Miss Gila, I can actually participate in the battle as well," I said while showing her my hand. I revealed the magic crystals tucked inside the bag. Gila froze the moment she saw those magic crystals. A look of pure shock washed over her face. She recognized them instantly. These were crystals that only mages could use. She never expected this young merchant to turn out to be such a major player. I looked like an ordinary merchant, but I had a secret weapon. I had prepared a large pouch of magic crystals well in advance. I told her straight out that I could hold my own in a fight. She looked at me like I was a man standing in a place I didn't belong. "Are you a mage?" Gila's voice trembled as she spoke. She sounded like she was struggling to believe her own eyes. "You could say that," I replied calmly. I kept my tone indifferent, as if it were no big deal. Gila leaned in and asked me another question. Her curiosity was burning now. "Mr. Lin Fan, which magic academy did you attend? Are you out here doing some kind of field training?" In this world, magic academies are the playgrounds of the elite. Only nobles get in, and a mage's status is second to none. The moment she suspected I was a mage, her attitude shifted completely. I just shook my head with a faint, amused smile. I let the mystery hang in the air for a second. "No academy," I said. "I'm self-taught." Gila's jaw dropped. Once again, she was stunned. My answer had caught her completely off guard. Self-taught mages are a different breed. They're rare geniuses who usually get scouted immediately. The top academies would break every rule just to recruit them. She looked at me with a new kind of intensity. Her eyes were filled with a sudden, deep respect. To her, my potential was absolute. It was immeasurable. Gila still thought my plan was a bit too risky. Reckless, to be honest. Maybe even a little insane, but in this world, a mage's status is extraordinary. They deserve respect from everyone they meet. She wasn't about to walk away from our contract now. Who wouldn't want to be tied to a mage with limitless potential? She realized I didn't actually have a death wish. I was just testing my own limits. I was pushing myself this way for a reason. Because I had the skills to back it up. With that kind of power, the risk naturally drops to almost nothing. "Mr. Lin Fan." Gila looked at me again, her tone shifting color. The helplessness she felt before was fading away. It was replaced by curiosity and a new sense of gravity. "Since you're a mage, I'll cooperate with you tonight. But I still suggest you stay on your guard. The demonic creatures of the desolate land are not easy to handle." I just looked at her with a confident smile and said, "Of course." Gila nodded and took the lead once more. But this time, her pace was noticeably faster. Her steps were lighter now that our training goals were aligned. We didn't hesitate for another second. We walked straight into the deepest parts of the territory, into the heart of the desolate land. Chapter 21. These are the kinds of problems you only find once in a lifetime. I didn't even need to chant a spell. The power was as natural as breathing. As we pushed deeper, the surrounding environment grew even harsher. The ground beneath my feet didn't even feel like soil anymore. It wasn't just cracks. Occasionally, deep, bottomless pits appeared, exhaling a cold and somber aura. The withered tree branches twisted, like a pair of skeletal hands, swaying in the wind. Their whispering rustle made my skin crawl as my talent finally triggered again. Gila's vigilance spiked to the absolute maximum as she suddenly stopped. She dropped her body low and gave me a sharp, warning look. She signaled for me to get down immediately. I obeyed without hesitation, knowing her survival instincts were far superior to mine in the wild. "Something's ahead." Gila's ears twitched ever so slightly. She was catching on to some kind of subtle, hidden sound. I held my breath. I tried to listen closely, but all I could hear was the wind and the frantic, heavy thumping of my own heart. Right then, a pungent, rotting stench hit me. It was followed by a low, guttural growl coming from the darkness nearby. My nerves tensed up instantly. They were demonic creatures, several hunched figures emerging from the shadows. They slowly materialized within the darkness. They were gaunt, their skin a sickly shade of grayish-green. Their nails were long and razor-sharp. They looked exactly like the claws of wild beasts. Their eyes glowed with a haunting light. A pale green glare pierced through the gloom. Their mouths hung slightly open. They exposed rows of rotted, jagged teeth. There were no less than 5 ghouls surrounding us. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly how dangerous these things were. Ghouls weren't just scavengers, they were killers. They weren't just aggressive, they were relentless. They were also highly venomous, and a single scratch or bite could be fatal. But at the same time, an uncontrollable excitement began to surge through my entire body. It bubbled up from the depths of my soul. The moment had arrived. This was a real battle. Unable to suppress the thrill, I almost unconsciously raised my right hand. I aimed my palm directly at one of the ghouls. A reddish-orange fireball condensed instantly in my hand and shot off with a piercing hiss. It flew straight toward the creature. But since this was my first real battle, my aim was absolutely terrible. That fireball, carrying all my strength and expectations, merely grazed the ghoul's body. It kept going until it finally crashed. The impact thundered against a massive tree. It was a withered trunk standing just behind the monster. The dry wood ignited instantly, bursting into flames. Thick smoke billowed out, but the ghoul remained completely unharmed. Startled by the flash, it let out a shrill screech and glared toward the source of the attack. I didn't expect my first shot to be so pathetic. I cursed under my breath and started to panic. The monsters weren't going anywhere. These things were far more dangerous than I had anticipated. They were faster than I imagined, their skin blending perfectly into the shadows. Isla stood there, watching the whole thing. She witnessed my terrible aim and heard my frustrated grumbling. I saw the corners of her mouth twitch. She was clearly reacting to my ridiculous marksmanship. This raw experience was something I simply couldn't avoid. My childish ideas about combat were being torn apart. I was acting like a standard, bottom-tier rookie mage. There was no doubt about it. But just as Isla was judging me in her head, a shocking detail hit her. She realized that when I cast that spell, I hadn't chanted a single word. She stood there stunned, wondering how such a thing was even possible. She thought back to everything she knew about magic and specialized mage classes. Every single school within the Warrior Academy taught the same thing. They all emphasized, without exception, that mages must chant. You had to recite incantations and coordinate gestures to evoke magical power. Chanting is the very foundation of magic. It's basic common sense. Isla's gaze shifted from amusement to intense focus. Her eyes suddenly grew sharp and piercing. She stopped caring about my terrible aim and stared fixedly at my mouth. She told herself that maybe she just hadn't been paying attention a moment ago, or perhaps my voice was just too low for her to hear clearly. I didn't notice Isla's strange behavior because I was too busy feeling suffocated by shame. I thought to myself, that was way too embarrassing. I focused again and began condensing a ball of water. I summoned a ball of fire and hurled it toward the ghoul. I aimed with more care this time, but the fireball missed again, grazing its shoulder. Damn it, I couldn't help but feel the struggle within me. I let out another curse under my breath, and Isla's doubt turned into instant shock. She was certain now I had only uttered that single curse during the entire process. Beyond that, I hadn't chanted a thing, and it was driving her crazy. It completely shattered her entire understanding of life. This wasn't how magic was supposed to work. Wasn't it common sense that you had to chant? How was I releasing magic like this? Was everything she learned a lie? She felt her entire worldview collapsing in that very moment. She stood there, paralyzed by the sheer surprise of it all. Meanwhile, my two failed attacks had completely enraged the creatures in front of us. The 5 ghouls were no longer just watching. They let out a piercing, high-pitched shriek. The sound was thick with pure rage and hunger. Their bodies were massive, looming even larger than grown men. Their grayish-green skin looked even more horrific in the dark as they suddenly lunged. They moved with terrifying speed toward us, so I immediately turned and bolted. As I ran, I shouted at the top of my lungs, "Can you do it? Protect me. I'm going to get eaten alive." Isla snapped out of it instantly, her eyes wide with panic. The ghouls were right on top of us. We were seconds away from death. She had lost her focus from the shock and cursed herself internally. She couldn't believe she'd gotten distracted now, so she quickly drew her blade. She pulled the long sword from her waist, and the steel flashed. It gave off a cold, lethal glint under the dim moonlight. She didn't hesitate for a single second, moving with the agility of a warrior. Like a true elite, she stepped up to face the lead ghoul. The long sword whistled through the air as she swung with everything she had. She aimed with surgical precision right at the creature's neck. The ghoul's body was tough, but it didn't matter. Nothing could withstand the sheer force of her strike. The only sound was the sickening crunch of snapping bone. The ghouls had whipped back violently, and its entire body went rigid. It hit the ground with a heavy thud, convulsing a few times in the dirt. Then, it went limp. I stole a glance back as I kept running. Seeing her battle stance and that cold efficiency gave me a strange feeling. I realized right then, this woman is incredibly strong. I honestly didn't expect it. I didn't think her raw strength would be this overwhelming. She finished off a ghoul with a single, effortless swing. My respect for her skill shot up instantly. She made it look easy, even with more ghouls closing in. Seeing her fight like that sparked something in me. My own courage began to surge. I realized this was the perfect moment to practice my skills. I stopped running and stood my ground near her. I stopped trying to snipe them from a distance. Instead, I waited for the next ghoul to lunge at me. I wanted to open fire at point-blank range. My fireball veered slightly as it left my hand. It was an almost imperceptible shift, invisible to the naked eye, but it still slammed right into the center of the ghoul's chest. The creature's rotting body went rigid. It let out a sharp, high-pitched hiss. It was the sound of putrid flesh vaporizing under extreme heat. Thick black smoke billowed out as the stench of decay filled my nose. The ghoul didn't even have time to scream before it collapsed. A single scream tore through the air as its body buckled. The relentless heat of my fireball was too much for it to handle. It shriveled into a heap of charred bone and hit the dirt. I felt a surge of pure adrenaline. This was my first real kill. Taking down a monster in actual combat felt completely different. The feeling of eliminating an enemy with my own hands was intoxicating. An unprecedented sense of achievement washed over me. Isla, however, was looking at me with a very strange expression. She had just confirmed once again how bizarre I really was. She realized I truly didn't need to chant to cast my spells. She watched me closely through the darkness of the night. I had unleashed my magic 3 times now, and all 3 times, I hadn't made a single mistake. Not one syllable uttered, not one wasted movement. Her eyes were swirling with a mess of complex emotions. There was shock, but there was also an intense curiosity. She couldn't wrap her head around how I was doing it. She knew this wasn't something a common mage could achieve. To her, my technique defied everything she knew about magic. How much longer would it take us to wipe out the rest of this pack? The pack of ghouls was still large, and my aim wasn't exactly perfect yet. I definitely needed more practice to sharpen my precision. But casting without chanting slashed my startup time, letting me sync perfectly with Isla. As the battle finally wound down, Isla sheathed her longsword. She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving under her leather armor. Dark patches of ghoul blood were splattered across her gear, but she hadn't taken a single hit, not a scratch on her body. She looked down at the charred, mangled corpses of the ghouls. They lay scattered across the dirt like burnt husks. Then she turned her gaze toward me, her heart heavy with conflicting thoughts. Chapter 24, Casting Time. Spells are supposed to require a chant. Everyone knows that. Was there something fundamental I was missing? Chapter 21. Usually, casting gives the enemy a window to strike while you recite the words. But I had bypassed that rule entirely during the heat of the fight. The battle was over, leaving behind the heavy scent of salt and seared flesh. The smell of ghoul blood, cooked by my magic, hung thick in the air. It mixed with the metallic tang of the slaughter. The stench of rot was overwhelming. The stench was enough to make anyone sick, but I just stood there, my chest still heaving. My heart was pounding violently, not from exhaustion, but from pure adrenaline. The rush was still surging through my spine. I looked at the charred, black corpses on the ground, mangled by my spells. Seeing the aftermath of my fireballs gave me an unprecedented sense of accomplishment. Holding that kind of power in my own hands made me want to lose it. I wanted to scream, "This is magic, this is real power." But Isla wasn't feeling nearly as relaxed. She sheathed her sword and stepped away. She leaned her weight against her longsword, the tip buried deep. It sank into the cracked, dry earth. She looked weakened, her body swaying slightly as she tried to catch her breath. Fine beads of sweat covered her skin from the high-intensity combat that had drained her energy. She glanced at the ghoul corpses on the ground, then looked back at me. I was still completely immersed in the thrill of the kill. Her eyes were fixed on me, and they were filled with a mess of complex emotions. To her, my aim was ridiculously bad, and my combat awareness was even worse. Several times, those ghouls were inches away from lunging at my face. And there I was, taking my sweet time to aim while the world ended around me. If not for her lightning-fast reactions, we'd both be dead. But one question kept burning in her mind. It defied everything she knew, every bit of common sense she'd ever learned. To summon magic, you have to construct a specific spell model. It's a step-by-step process, and there is one link that is more critical than any other. The one indispensable element that has guided humanity for ages. The incantation of faith. That chant is the key that detonates the magic. Those laws are engraved in the deepest depths of the soul of every intelligent creature in this world. They are the domain of the gods themselves. But did this guy actually chant anything? Isla strained her memory, trying to recall every second of the fight. She would swear on her honor as a warrior that I, Lin Fan, from the very beginning to the bitter end. Aside from a few frustrated curses, every time I missed a shot, didn't utter a single syllable. Not one real incantation. How the hell did I do it? She took a sharp breath. She took a deep breath and straightened her back. Then, she walked straight toward me. "Lord Lin Fan," she called out, her voice steady. I snapped out of my excitement and turned to her with an embarrassed look. My performance, just now, it was pretty pathetic, wasn't it? That was actually my first time ever fighting in real life. I got a little nervous and missed a bunch of shots. I'm really sorry about that. No, that's not it at all, she said, shaking her head as she looked me in the eye. She stared deep into my soul, asking her next question slowly, word for word. "Why don't you need to chant when you cast magic?" The smile on my face completely froze. I stood there stunned for 2 long seconds. A massive question mark popped up in my mind. What the hell? What even is a chant? Casting a fireball is already hard enough. Chanting? I looked at Ayla's face. She had this look of pure shock that seemed to say, "Don't tell me you don't know," and my heart skipped a beat. A terrifying thought exploded in my mind. Do the mages of this world actually have to recite incantations to cast spells? I suddenly broke into a cold sweat. My entire understanding of magic came from the reverse engineering done by the scientists. Back home, in the chantless casting manual they wrote, that manual explained every single step from energy conduction to mental visualization. Every part of the process was clearly laid out using scientific theory, but it didn't mention a single word about chanting. I had always assumed this was just how magic was used. Now it seems that, without meaning to, I've revealed a massive secret. What my country gave me wasn't just a simple, translated user guide, but a high-end version, scientifically modified, optimized, and completely overhauled. It was a complete innovation. So, what does that make me in this reality? A freak? A heretic? A target? Someone who doesn't need to chant? My body was instantly drenched in a cold sweat. I realized right then and there that this ability to cast spells without a single word could be a massive problem if the world found out. This had to be a trump card that I could never reveal to anyone. Because who knows? What kind of chaos would it cause if the world knew? The Mages Association. If those high and mighty elites found out about me, would they capture me just to dissect and study me? I had to trick them. My brain started racing at full speed. I had to find a way out of this. But on the surface, I forced my face into a vague, innocent expression. I needed to make her feel like there was absolutely nothing wrong. Ayla stared at my face, searching for a crack in my mask. She looked like her brain was about to explode. You didn't chant? How is that possible? I didn't say a single word, so I leaned in closer to Ayla. I deliberately moved toward her to mess with her head. Maybe it's because my chanting is a little different. It's something special, so listen very closely. She leaned in, her eyes wide with anticipation. I could see the desperation in her gaze. She was practically begging for an explanation. I took a deep breath and prepared my next move. Her entire focus shifted to my lips and my throat. She was waiting for the slightest vibration of a syllable. I closed my eyes and focused on the mana inside me. A low humming sound began to resonate from my chest. It was so faint it was almost impossible to hear. A second later, a blazing fireball slowly materialized in my palm. The spell whistled through the air and struck the target with precision. The stone exploded, sending jagged rocks flying in every direction. But Ayla didn't even glance at the shattered boulder. She just stared at me, completely frozen. She had heard a sound, but it didn't come from my mouth. It was a vibration. The sound came from my throat, but my lips stayed tightly sealed from start to finish. Ayla let out a long, heavy sigh of relief as her entire body relaxed. The feeling that her entire worldview was about to collapse vanished instantly. So it's just ventriloquism, she muttered, or some special throat-singing technique. She looked at me, the previous shock and fear in her eyes fading away. That terrifying aura she felt moments ago was gone. Now, she just looked annoyed, like she was dealing with a guy trying to act too clever. And here I thought you were some one-in-a-million genius, she sighed. Turns out you're just using your throat muscles to trick the air. She pouted, her tone dripping with the irritation of someone who'd been pranked. To her, this wasn't even a clever trick, it was just a cheap gimmick. She saw it as a completely unnecessary display of showmanship. I just scratched my nose and let out a dry, awkward laugh. I put on the perfect face of a man who had just been caught red-handed. I gave her a clumsy, slightly embarrassed smile to sell the act. The moment she saw that expression, she was sold. Every last bit of her suspicion evaporated into thin air. She actually started to comfort me, joking that it was better this way. If someone could actually cast magic without chanting, she teased, the Mages Association would have a heart attack. If they knew, they'd probably lock you in a lab for research immediately. Then you'd really be in trouble. She said it without thinking, but I listened with every ounce of my attention. My smile didn't waver, but inside, my heart turned to ice. I realized I had just barely dodged a bullet. I made a secret vow right then, no more silent casting in front of others. Safety comes first, and I needed to keep this misunderstanding alive. Ayla regained her composure and went back to being a professional adventurer. She approached the ghoul corpses, ignoring the putrid stench. She drew her dagger and skillfully sliced open their charred chests. From one of the bodies, she pulled out a crystal the size of a fingernail. It emitted a faint, sickly gray glow and was covered in viscous slime. This is a magic core, she said, wiping it clean with a tattered rag. She tossed it to me, explaining that low-level cores like these aren't worth much. You can sell these to alchemy shops for maybe 10 to 30 copper coins. She kept talking while she quickly dissected the remaining corpses. In no time, she had collected 5 magic cores in total. According to the Adventurers Guild rules, all loot belongs to the employer. She handed all 5 cores over to me without hesitation. These 5 stones were the only proof left that those monsters had ever existed. Altogether, they might actually be worth a single silver coin. I gripped the magic cores, still warm from the monsters' bodies. They were foul and stinking, but my pulse started to quicken with excitement. Originally, I hadn't planned on making any money today. I only left the city to put my new skills to the test. I didn't expect to walk away with a profit. My back was starting to ache from the tension. It felt like we had been out here for an entire night. After a quick sweep, I confirmed there were no other immediate problems. The immediate area was finally clear of danger. I shook my head to stay focused. We didn't stop to rest, we kept moving instead. We ventured even deeper into the heart of the desolation. As far as I was concerned, the real work was just starting. Those 5 ghouls from before. They were nothing but a light appetizer. My mastery of the fireball spell was improving with every cast, but it still wasn't enough to satisfy me. I had to take full advantage of this valuable training opportunity, especially since I had a professional bodyguard watching my back. I needed to focus and practice seriously, especially after Ayla saw my fireball spell. My accuracy was still worrying, to say the least, but the raw power of the spell made up for my lack of aim. Ayla also realized that our mission tonight wasn't over yet. She didn't stop. She kept pushing forward into the dark. The desolation didn't seem as dangerous as I had first imagined. More importantly, I realized something crucial. The real reward was already within my grasp. I was making connections with a mage who clearly had a bright future. For a rookie warrior like her, this partnership was all upside. We both agreed to keep going without a second thought. Over the next few hours, the landscape of the desolation changed. It transformed completely into my personal hunting ground. It was the perfect outdoor firing range for my magic. I kept my eyes peeled for any movement in the shadows. Behind that withered tree, Isla whispered suddenly. 3 o'clock to your left. Her voice was low and sharp, like a cheetah stalking its prey. I snapped my head toward the target and concentrated with everything I had. I unleashed a fireball without a single moment of hesitation. Boom! The fireball grazed the withered tree. It exploded in the open space behind it, startling a ghoul. The creature had just barely poked its head out. It ducked back immediately, but my shot was still way too high. Do you think you're just shooting at peace? Or maybe just scaring birds? Isla muttered, her fear turning into annoyance. I waved her off, thinking, I know. The next one will hit the mark soon. Suddenly, a new horde of ghouls was drawn to the noise. This time, Isla actually looked pleased with the challenge. I had learned my lesson from the previous misses. I stopped trying to go for precision kills from a distance. Instead, I waited for the right moment to strike. I watched Isla use her exquisite swordsmanship to tangle with the ghouls. Was she trying to create an opening for me? I moved in closer and took my stance. I fired at point-blank range against those slow-moving targets. The fireball flew true and slammed directly into a ghoul's face. The monster didn't stand a chance. It didn't even have time to scream before its head was instantly charred by the heat. It turned into a piece of smoking charcoal and crashed into the ground. Isla let out an excited shout at the sight. As the body count rose, my aim and confidence grew right along with it. The improvement was visible to the naked eye. I went from missing 9 out of 10 shots at the start to landing at least one solid hit every time. Soon, I was hitting 1 out of every 5. I was even able to calmly predict the ghouls' movements and snipe them while Isla covered me. She didn't even need to go out of her way to create openings for me anymore. She just had to be an impregnable wall, holding the front line. Swinging her long sword with lethal precision, she blocked every claw and fang aimed at me while I repositioned. I transformed myself into a living turret. Pure efficiency. I unleashed one deadly fireball after another. I cleared the flanks and neutralized every threat, watching her back as she watched mine. After I don't know how long, the last wave of ghouls finally let out a desperate hiss. They scattered after leaving 7 or 8 more corpses behind. They ran away with their tails between their legs. They vanished into the limitless darkness. This long battle had finally reached its conclusion. It was over. Isla let herself collapse onto the ground. She was gasping for air. The intense exertion had clearly taken a toll on her body. The sturdy leather armor she wore was now completely soaked through with sweat. It clung to her skin as she tried to peel her hand away. Her right hand, the one that held the sword, was raw and pink. The base of her thumb was blistered and clearly causing her a lot of pain. I wasn't doing much better myself. My magic crystal reserves were still holding steady, and I had plenty of mana left. But my mental state was exhausted to the absolute limit. To cast even a single spell, I had to visualize the process with perfect clarity. I had to hold the image precisely in my mind. Every complex detail had to be perfect. Maintaining those magic circuit diagrams had drained my mental energy completely. It was overwhelming, spending several hours like that. The sheer weight of the mental labor was crushing. The intensity was so high that I felt my temples throbbing with a violent force. I was starting to have a serious problem with my vision. Everything was doubling before my eyes. I needed to rest, so I shook my heavy head to clear it. I took a moment to scan the area, checking our immediate surroundings. The ghouls in this zone were gone. They seemed to be afraid of us, so they shouldn't be back for now, I noted. I pointed to a low cliff nearby and said, there's a cave I scouted earlier, let's rest there. The cave wasn't large, but at least it was dry. The entrance was blocked by dense brambles, enough to keep the opening completely hidden from view. We slipped inside and finally, we felt a small sense of security. I leaned back against the cold rock wall and pulled the bag of magic cores from my pocket. I emptied them onto the ground and started counting tonight's loot. 1, 2, 3. A total of 53 magic cores. I weighed one in my hand and started doing the math. According to Isla, a single low-quality magic core. On average, these sell for about 20 coins. 20 copper coins. 53 cores meant 1,060. 1,060 copper coins. In other words, just over 10 silver coins. Enough to cover the house expenses. This is enough to pay me back for your wages, I joked to Isla. But then I frowned. I started calculating the overhead. Tonight, I had burned through 2 entire crystals. 2 high-grade, earth element magic crystals. Even buying them in bulk at wholesale prices. The market value for these things is steep. On the black market, they go for 2.5 silver coins each. 2 crystals cost me 5 silver coins, which meant Isla and I had just risked our lives. Worked like pack mules all night long, and in the end, after subtracting my operating costs, I was down 5 silver coins, and that's not even counting equipment wear, or the sheer mental exhaustion I was feeling. If I head out next time, I'll go alone. That would save me 10 coins right there. That's 5 silver coins gone just for Isla's wages, leaving me with a net profit of exactly 5 silver coins. But was it really worth it? I looked over at Isla, who was still gasping for air right beside me. I knew perfectly well that if she hadn't been at the front, protecting me with her own combat skills, my mediocre aim wouldn't have saved me from those beasts. By the second hour, I would have been completely drained, running entirely on fumes and mental willpower. I would have been easy prey, torn into bloody pieces by that swarm of monsters. My life is tied to the future of 1.4 billion people back home. Gambling my life for a few silver coins? It's not worth it, not even close. In my mind, I drew a massive red X over this entire plan. Leaving the city to hunt monsters for cash is a sucker's game. The risk is too high, the reward is too low, and the math just doesn't add up. This path is a dead end. While I was lost in thought, Isla moved closer, watching me intently from the side. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. A storm of mixed emotions was swirling behind her gaze. To her, the sheer speed of a mage's growth is something legendary. In fact, it's downright terrifying. She probably remembered her own start 5 years ago, back when she was just a fresh-faced student at the academy, the prestigious Warrior Academy. Even under the constant, watchful eye of her instructors, she still trembled the first time she faced a monster. A home eater, she was so terrified she couldn't even grip her sword. It took her an entire year of grueling training, just to reach the point where she could stand her ground and take on a home eater all by herself. That progress was bought with an endless amount of sweat and blood, yet I had done it in a single night. I had gone from a complete amateur, who couldn't even land a single decent shot, to a human turret hitting every mark with precision. I was now a partner who could actually stand beside her. Seeing me grow this fast, it clearly left her shaken. She was dealing with a mix of awe and even a hint of jealousy. If only I had a talent for magic too. She sighed deeply within her own mind. She kept that silence locked away inside, but she knew the truth of her situation. She took after her mother, just an ordinary person from a humble background. Being able to graduate with honors from the Warrior Academy was already a feat. It was a stroke of incredible luck, considering a magic academy requires massive resources. The tuition alone for a 40-minute session is astronomical. They place a huge value on your lineage and the size of your mana pool. For someone like her, the path to magic was invisible. She didn't even dare to dream of it, yet she felt a burning desire. She wanted to ask me how I had learned so much about magic, but she swallowed her curiosity once again. The words died right on the edge of her lips. She knew it was a taboo to ask. A mage's heritage and knowledge are their own. It is their most precious possession and the very foundation of their power. It is their very livelihood. To ask about it so recklessly is considered extremely rude and even hostile. No one would easily reveal the facts of how they mastered the deep secrets of magic, especially not to someone they just met this year. Forget it, she thought, shaking her head. She forced those foolish thoughts out of her mind. But the way she looked at me changed completely, without even realizing it. Her gaze held a new layer of respect and a deliberate closeness. In any case, befriending a promising mage is always a smart move. It was a great idea. Outside the cave, the sky was beginning to clear and my own thoughts cleared with it. Since the path of just hunting monsters isn't working, I must shift toward a much safer development route. I need influence. I need to stand on level ground with the elite. I need to build my own power. I need a force that can be accepted by the mainstream society of this world. The path ahead was becoming clearer in my mind. I have to join the Magic Academy. Only by entering that circle can I truly master the system. I need to understand the extraordinary power system of this world. I need access to the knowledge only the elite possess. I need to ensure that my future isn't left to chance. I need to guarantee my own safety and take control of my life. I will grow until I am a towering tree that casts a long shadow, a force capable of touching every corner of this world. Do I want to be a player, a savior, or just a pawn to be sacrificed at any moment? The choice is mine. Risking my life on the front lines and relying on luck is pure stupidity. It is something I must never do again. The struggles of a cheating player. Chapter 26. The problems of a calm player. Deep inside the cave, Isla leaned against the rough rock wall. She was breathing steadily, quickly recovering her strength. A full night of high-intensity combat followed by a moment of peace. Even an elite graduate of the Warrior Academy felt the weight of exhaustion. The fatigue was deep and rooted in my very bones. My own condition wasn't much better than Isla's. My mind felt like a rubber band that had been stretched to its limit. It was so tense that now, as I finally relaxed, waves of pain washed over my head. But even after deciding to join the Magic Academy, there was still one thing I had to confirm. I closed my eyes and sank my consciousness deep into the void. I searched my mind, trying to perceive the flow of time. I looked for the talent that connects my two worlds. In the 3 years since I was transported, I felt this material transfer talent countless times. It's like an iron box welded to my soul with clear, unbreakable limits. The rules are rigid, 500 grams, not a milligram more or less. The cooldown is 72 hours, not a single second faster. After learning the fireball spell and personally slaughtering a mountain of monsters, I had started to think naively. I thought that leveling up and killing monsters might loosen the hinges of that iron box. Maybe I could push the limit to 501 grams, or shave just 1 minute off the cooldown time. However, reality is cold and indifferent. That familiar, hard, and immovable sensation remained. The limit was still there. It was all too clear. Not a single change. Damn it. They really aren't giving me even a sliver of a chance. I cursed under my breath and opened my eyes. I couldn't hide the disappointment written across my face. Isla immediately noticed the shift in my expression. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." She kept repeating it, over and over again. After all, those materials were worth at least 5 silver coins. Thank you. It's nothing, I said, just a small sum. I shook my head and asked her a casual question. Isla, tell me something. Have you ever heard of a talent that can actually improve? Isla froze, staring at me as if I were a complete stranger. Lord Lin Fan, she asked, sounding confused. Why would you think that? Talent is a gift the gods bestow upon us the moment we are born. It's a mark etched into our very blood. How could it ever change? To her, it was a bizarre question, like asking an adult if they could still grow taller. I was just asking out of curiosity, I said, trying to play it off. I let out a dry, hollow laugh. Take the legendary figures of Kadi's city, for example, she continued. The Dragon Rider, or the commander of the Dragon Army, the greatest of them all. Even that legendary conquering hero, was his talent the same as a normal man's? Was he just like the common folk from the very start? The answer was obvious. Of course not. Isla answered matter-of-factly, clearly admiring those great figures. Those characters already possessed overwhelming talent from birth. Abilities like the blessing of the dragon blood, or the war frenzy. How could ordinary people ever hope to possess something like that? Talent determines a person's ceiling. It's just common sense. Pure, undeniable common sense. I fell silent. Perhaps in this world, she was right. Talent really is treated like a title of nobility. It's your origin. It's predestined. It's an unalterable mark of your social class. I temporarily accepted that talent couldn't be improved as an objective fact. The most important thing right now was finding a way to join the Magic Academy. That was the only real way to elevate my social status. Isla, if I want to join the Magic Academy, what should I do? Where exactly should I go? I asked her. Isla wasn't surprised by my question at all. After everything she'd seen, she viewed me as a self-taught magic genius. Someone like me shouldn't stay in this remote place like Blackstone City. Silver Moon City, she replied. It's a mid-sized city and the closest one to Blackstone. It's also the only place nearby with a branch of the Magic Academy. I looked toward the direction of Silver Moon City. Is there a safe way to get there? I asked. Isla stood up and walked toward the cave entrance. She stared out at the desolate horizon in the distance. The road isn't short, over 100 kilometers in a straight line. Where we are now is just the periphery of the solar lands. If we push further in, we'll encounter demonic creatures far more troublesome than ghouls. Like the mana, she warned. Her voice trailed off, the danger of the journey ahead clear. She mentioned wasteland wolves and sandworms, creatures that launch sneak attacks from beneath the earth. She paused before explaining that no fixed trade routes exist between our cities. Blackstone City and Silver Moon City are isolated. The safest way for an ordinary person to travel is to wait. Wait for a noble lord heading towards Silver Moon City, and then pay a fee to follow their caravan. The noble's guards won't care if you live or die, but their powerful presence alone scares off most monsters. However, there was a catch. Lin Fan, in this past month, I haven't heard of a single noble traveling to Silver Moon. If I was in a hurry, my only choice was to hire my own guard detail. That's exactly what I was thinking, but I couldn't just wait around. I asked her how many people I'd need and what the cost would be. I needed a shield for the journey. I had to figure this out now. Isla began to calculate the cost seriously for me. She went through the requirements point by point, counting on her fingers while noting how difficult it is for a lone mage. To be honest, your actual combat experience is lacking, so the guard team needs to be extremely reliable. I thanked her for the honesty. It's best to have 2 heavy armored warriors for the front line. They'll take the brunt of any head-on attacks. Then you'll need scouts for reconnaissance and support. They'll cover your flanks while you stay in the center. With you acting as the long-range magic DPS, the formation is set. A standard 5-person adventurer squad would take 2 days and nights. But we had to account for the unknown. Potential accidents and delays are common on the road, so we budgeted for 3 days, plus the 3 days they'd need to return. Isla looked at me and dropped the final number. In Blackstone City, a qualified adventurer isn't cheap. A long-distance escort costs at least 10 silver coins a day. For the return trip, we'd calculate half price, 15 silver. That brought the total to 45 silver coins per person. For 4 guards, that meant 180 silver coins total. I nodded, as the price was within my expected range. I checked the funds I had on hand right then and there. I had just over 200 silver coins, barely enough, but not quite. Isla's expression turned serious as she mentioned we also needed consumables. She spoke about it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. We need at least 5 for the wilderness, in case we hit a swarm we can't handle. Or if we run into an elite monster that's particularly powerful. We need something to draw their attention and buy us time to escape. Using people as live bait, my heart sank at the suggestion. Even though I've been struggling in this world for 3 years now, this blatant way of treating others was hard to swallow. Treating human lives as nothing more than tools and disposable goods. Calling them consumables made me feel physically sick to my stomach. Isla didn't seem to notice my discomfort at all. She wasn't being cruel, she was just looking at it like a professional. She continued her cold, calculated analysis of our survival odds. From a tactical standpoint, this is the most effective method, and it's also the cheapest way to save your own life. A healthy slave costs about 5 silver coins. But if we're only using them as bait, we don't need top quality. We can just buy the cheap ones. I looked at her, realizing how different the logic of this world really was. The thin and weak ones only cost about 2 silver coins each. If we buy 5 of them, it'll only set us back 10 silver coins. She looked at me, giving me the final breakdown of the costs. 180 silver coins for the supplies, plus 10 for the slaves, bringing our total to 190. That's the bare minimum we need to ensure we reach the safe zone and make it back to Silver Moon City in one piece. Of course, regarding those slaves, if you manage to keep them alive, and they actually make it back to Silver Moon City with us, we can just sell them off again. That way, we might even make some of our silver back. A heavy silence filled the cave. I didn't say a word. In my mind, I saw those faces from the slave market again. Numb expressions and empty, hollow stares. I remembered when I first arrived in this world, begging and scraping, just to get a single scrap of moldy black bread. Living a life worse than a stray dog's, and I hated every second of it. This world treated human lives like nothing more than weeds, disposable and easily replaced. And now, I was about to use that same cruel system. I was going to buy living people, treating them like consumables, ready to be sacrificed at any moment. Elena watched me, misinterpreting my silence. She thought I was hesitating because of the price tag. She leaned in, trying to offer me some advice. Lord Lin Fan, I know this is a lot of money. It's practically the life savings of an ordinary family. But you have to understand, as a mage, your future is limitless. Once you enter the Magic Academy, this investment will pay off. You'll make this back 100, even 1,000 times over. I knew she had it all wrong. It wasn't the silver I was worried about. I was just wondering if I was doing the right thing. There was no answer, or rather, the answer was too cruel to face. If I died here, I couldn't change this world, let alone find my way home. My dreams of my homeland would be crushed under the weight of this reality. My life wasn't just a story, it was a fight for survival. Compared to the safety of my society back home, nothing else mattered. I was doing this for the sake of 1.4 billion compatriots. My personal moral purity seemed so pale and ridiculous, I had to survive. I told myself that if I wanted to flip this gambling table, I first had to take a seat and join the game. I had to sit at the table and obey their rules for now. Even if those rules were filthy, lost, and drenched in blood. I lifted my head and looked at Elena. The struggle and hesitation in my eyes had vanished completely. They were replaced by a cold, sharp determination. We'll go with your plan, I said, my voice low but steady. My tone carried an undeniable firmness that left no room for debate. We set out in a couple of days. Chapter 27, Returning to the Slave Market. The dark trade awaited. When dawn finally broke, the two of us gathered our things. We stepped out of the cave, and I saw the familiar horizon again. The jagged silhouette of Black Rock City loomed in the distance. I felt a strange, heavy pressure in my chest. In just one night, everything had changed. There was no turning back. I felt like I had undergone a complete transformation. The city wall used to be my only place of rest. It looked the same as always, but as I approached it again, my mental state was entirely different than before. This wall used to be a sanctuary for me, a place where I could catch my breath and escape the fear of the open desert. But now, I felt more like a man standing on his own 2 feet. It was just a beginner village, a starting point I was about to leave behind. I handed over the entry fee, and the two of us crossed through the city gates. We stepped back inside, walking the same path as before. The scene was chaotic but bursting with life, filled with the shouts of street vendors. I heard pedestrians chatting and the crunch of wheels over the muddy stones. The sounds of daily life intertwined all around us. After a night of internal struggle, this atmosphere felt incredibly grounding. I felt myself relax as Elena said, I'll head to the Adventurers Guild first. I'll help you look for suitable teammates. Once you're ready, we can set out at any time. Elena stopped her pace at a fork in the road. She turned and looked at me. All right, I replied. I nodded at her. I pulled 8 silver coins from my pouch and handed them over. This is the balance from last night, I said. Elena took the money with a wide smile on her face. She was clearly satisfied with me as a partner. I was generous, I kept my word, and I had massive potential. She probably thought this long mission would be a turning point for her entire career. After saying goodbye to Elena, I didn't head back to my stone hut immediately. Instead, I turned and walked toward a different street. My first stop was a specific shop in the city's alchemy district. The shop was small, and the light inside was incredibly dim. A strange scent of herbs and minerals mixed with water drifted through the center of the room. A gaunt old man with a goatee and a dog was hunched over the counter, muttering to himself while examining a strange mineral. I cleared my throat to get his attention. I dumped the 53 ghoul magic cores I'd gathered last night in a pile. They clattered onto the counter, and the old man took a look. The gray crystals were still covered in grime. They were coated in dried blood and bodily fluids. Without a single expression on his face, he picked one up. He held it close to the oil lamp to examine it. He scraped it with his fingernail and tossed it onto a scale. Low quality, he muttered. There are way too many impurities in these. The old man spoke with a raspy voice, offering a bulk price for the lot. 10 silver coins and 60 copper coins. This price was actually higher than I expected. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't about to waste time haggling with him. I simply took the money and tucked it away safely. I felt the weight of the coins in my pouch. On my way back, I stopped by the bakery again. I thought about how much things had changed. Compared to where I was just 1 month ago, This was a completely different world. That old, dilapidated shop from before? It had been completely renovated with a brand new management system. A fresh oak sign hung out front, and the place was packed with people. Most of them looked like wealthy merchants or regional traders. I even saw well-dressed noble butlers waiting in line. The owner of the bakery, Gillis, no longer looked like a man covered in kitchen grease. He wasn't that same scruffy person anymore. He was wearing a decent silk suit that puffed out over his frame, stretched tight across his chest. His face was radiant, glowing with health. He was busy attending to customers, the spitting image of a businessman, a successful one at that. But the moment he saw me walk in, Gillis froze in his tracks. He immediately ditched the distinguished client he was serving and rushed over to greet me with a strange, wide smile. He looked absolutely beaming as he called out, "Brother, Lin Fan, you're finally here." He enthusiastically led me toward the backyard of the shop. This was the main channel for our business. He led me straight into his private lounge. "Boss Gillis, business seems to be treating you well," I said, scanning the room's surprisingly luxurious decor. He flashed a grin and replied, "Hello, it's all thanks to you." Gillis personally poured me a tall glass of wheat beer. His demeanor shifted instantly, becoming incredibly humble as he leaned in. "Brother, to be honest, the money I've made this month, it's more than I used to make in several years combined." I took a sip of the brew and decided not to beat around the bush. "Boss Gillis, I've come here today for a specific reason. I'm here to tell you that our current partnership, it might have to come to an end." The smile on Gillis's face froze instantly. "Brother, what do you mean by that?" He looked at me, his eyes wide with sudden panic. "If you think your cut is too small, we can renegotiate right now. I'll give you 70%, no 80, just keep the supply coming." He was desperate, and I could see why. That white bread had become his entire lifeline. That bread is the talk of high society in Blackstone City. If the supply cuts off, everything he worked for vanishes. I shook my head and told him it wasn't about the money. I explained that I was leaving Blackstone City for the Seldaemon Magic Academy. Gillis listened intently as I laid out my plans. When he heard I had already mastered magic and was going to be a mage, his face twisted into a mask of pure shock. But beneath the surprise, I saw a flicker of understanding. He knew a man like me wouldn't stay in a small pond like this forever. To me, the bread business was just a stepping stone. Gillis let out a long, heavy sigh, his expression turning complex. "It's a shame, but if you have a brighter future ahead, I'm happy for you." He's a shrewd businessman. He knows there's no point in forcing a hand. I told him I had 10 bags of flour left to sell him at our agreed price. It was my way of settling our accounts before I disappeared for good. Gillis didn't hesitate for a second and nodded immediately. He handed over 100 silver coins to close the deal. He bought every last bit of stock I had on me. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as the transaction finished. My ties to Blackstone City were officially severed, so I headed home. I sat down and leaned against a cold stone wall. I spread all the money out on the ground in front of me. Then I moved it all to the table. There were 100 silver coins. And there they were, shining gold coins, stacked high. A small mountain of wealth sat on the table, and my tension finally broke. I was finally free from the harsh truth of my situation. The consequences and insecurities of this world didn't feel so heavy anymore. The fear I felt when I first arrived had vanished. I began to pack my things. In reality, there wasn't much to take with me. I grabbed my spell-casting training manual. I packed the Chantless Spell Movement Guide and the brainwave feedback device. The headset was my most vital piece of tech. I wrapped it carefully in several layers of wax cloth. I tucked it close to my body, knowing it was my lifeblood. It was my most precious possession, along with a few magic crystals and some clothes. I packed a change of gear and some medicine. I organized the emergency supplies sent from my home country into different categories. Everything was ready. Now, there was only one thing left to do. One last thing. I needed to buy slaves. I stood in front of the mirror and stared at my reflection. I put on a decent set of clothes. I checked my expression, forcing a smile for the people outside. With the sadness gone, I didn't look like a low-class merchant anymore. I walked back toward the center of the city. I headed straight for that shop I knew so well. I nodded as people greeted me. I kept moving through the crowd. Step by step, I felt the weight of my new life. The streets were packed with familiar faces. I kept my head held high. I was no longer the desperate man I used to be. On this path, every choice I made defined my survival. Many traveling merchants recognized me from the city markets. They looked at me, whispering and pointing. "Is that Lin Fan, the Void Porter? Why does he look so important? He's never dressed like that before. He looks completely different. Didn't you hear? They say he's partnered up with the bakery owner. The Golden Wheat, Lin Fan." Those merchants watched me with eyes full of mixed emotions. Surprise, jealousy, and a hint of smugness from the thick-skinned ones. Some even tried to approach me to suck up and get on my good side. I brushed them off with a cold stare, refusing to give them the time of day. I kept walking until I stood in front of the largest slave shop in the city. The owner, a dealer who had once looked down on me, nearly jumped out of his skin. He scrambled off his reclining chair the second he saw me coming. He rushed over to greet me, bowing low and calling me my lord. He asked me what kind of merchandise I was looking for today. He claimed he had just received a fresh shipment of high-quality stock. Strong slaves, guaranteed to be healthy and hardworking. The boss looked like he was about to burst with excitement from the potential sale. He leaned in with a fawning, sycophantic smile plastered across his face. It was a complete 180 from how he treated me before. I looked at his groveling face and felt nothing but contempt. All around us, the small-time traders and street peddlers watched the scene. Even the guards were looking at me with newfound envy and respect. But deep down, I didn't feel the pride they expected me to feel. I felt an inexplicable sadness, because this is how the world works. If you have money, you're a god. If you don't have money or power, you're nothing but a peasant. You're just an ant waiting to be stepped on, at someone else's whim. And right here, right now, I had become another chapter in this human story. I was part of this cruel system, so I suppressed the flicker of resistance, burning in my heart. I forced an indifferent expression onto my face. I looked at the dealer and spoke only 3 words. Lead the way. Chapter 28. In the end, I've become exactly what I used to hate. The slave boss took the lead. His wrinkled face was twisted into a smile like a blooming flower. His back was hunched low, his heavy frame straining. Bending so far forward, he was almost parallel to the dirty ground. Every 2 steps, he turned his head back to check on me. He was terrified that his new tycoon might somehow get lost. My lord, he chirped. This way, please, right this way. I didn't give him a second thought. I didn't pay him much attention, keeping my gaze sharp and inquisitive. I walked calmly through the market. The merchandise was laid out right in front of me. Massive iron cages lined both sides of the path. In the cage to my left, several towering orc warriors glared with pure hatred at every merchant passing by. Even the guards avoided looking directly into that cage. Their massive torsos shifted as they moved. Their knotted muscles were covered in horrific scars. Some of the wounds were fresh, still oozing blood. These were the eternal marks left behind from a failed rebellion, carved by whips and branding irons. My eyes scanned these broken warriors. Slaves of this caliber were high-level fighters. They were far too valuable to be used as mere bait. In another cage not far away, several elves with beautiful faces were locked inside. Unlike the defiant orcs, they weren't aggressive. They simply hugged their knees in silence. They hid their faces deep between their arms. Those long, signature-pointed ears hung limp. It was as if they were trying to shut out this filthy world. They were clinging to their last shred of dignity. Sir, look at this one. The merchant noticed my gaze. Linger for a moment. In front of the elven cage, the boss rushed over like a fly smelling blood. He pointed to an elf with long, flaxen-colored hair. He started his pitch, spitting saliva everywhere. The Moontongue Forest rarely sees a bloodline this pure. Her looks are absolute top tier. Just look at this skin, this body. She sings, she dances, and she's docile. Buy her as a personal servant or whatever you like. I arched my eyebrows and let out a short, dry laugh. My gaze didn't linger on her for even a second. I looked right past that high-end elf without a word. Instead, I turned my attention to the very next cage. Too expensive, I said. I'm not buying that. The merchant's pitch died in his throat, his smile twitching. He looked awkward for a moment before pointing to a nearby cage. How about this Earthfire Abyss dwarf? Born blacksmiths, if a bit stubborn. In terms of raw stamina, they're worth 2 men. I shook my head again, unimpressed by his selection. The purpose of my visit today was crystal clear. I needed expendables, and they had to be cheap. Take me to the clearance section, I commanded coldly. The merchant's face froze instantly. The greedy spark in his eyes vanished. His enthusiasm plummeted as he sized me up once more. He scanned me from head to toe with a businessman's suspicion. The clearance section was the bottom of the barrel. Had he heard me right? That place was for the old and the sick. It was full of human trash that nobody wanted, even for hard labor. Even mine supervisors would complain they were a waste of food. This man looked decent enough to be doing me a massive favor. He was an honored guest of the Golden Spike's boss. He didn't seem like someone I should compromise with. I thought about the money I was about to spend. The boss didn't dare to make a move in a place like this. He kept his expression neutral, following the businessman's code. The client's needs are everything, and you don't ask unnecessary questions. Not a single word more than necessary. Understood. Sir, this way please, he said. The smile on the boss's face dimmed significantly, but his attitude remained respectful as he gestured for me to follow. We steered clear of the aquatic merchandise. We bypassed the expensive, flashy stock and entered a narrow, sewage-filled hallway. We moved away from the high-end district toward the dark underbelly. We headed into the deepest, most secluded part of the market. The further we went, the dimmer the light became. The stench in the air grew thick enough to choke a man. Rusted iron cages were stacked haphazardly against the damp, stained walls. The creatures locked inside didn't even look like orcs anymore. They still had a shred of fighting spirit left in them. Or maybe they were just clinging to the last bit of elven dignity. These were true rejects, like the dwarf with a broken leg leaning against the iron bars. His eyes were fixed blankly on a puddle of sewage to the south. I saw an old human man curled up like a shield in the corner. He was clutching his chest and coughing into his hand. He coughed violently, right next to several children who were nothing but skin and bone. They lay on the freezing floor with empty, hollow stares. They didn't even have the strength left to move. I let my gaze drift slowly across those listless, vacant faces. It reminded me of exactly who I was 3 years ago. Back then, I was just like one of them. I would have fought wild dogs for half a piece of moldy black bread, just to find a roof that could keep out the wind and the rain. I would have dropped to my knees without a second thought. I would have kissed the mud-caked boots of the city guards. God, I hated this world. I hated a society that treated living people like disposable cattle. But now I was standing on the other side of the bars, and I had a heavy bag of gold gripped firmly in my hand. As a buyer, I stood there indifferently examining lives as humble as my own once was. I had become the very type of person I hated most. A sense of heartbreaking irony churned in my chest, but I couldn't turn back. I forced myself to suppress the pity and disgust rising in my heart. I had to analyze and choose with cold, hard logic. I had to win. Because right now, I wasn't just a man standing alone. This life wasn't just mine anymore. Standing right there behind me were 1.4 billion of my fellow countrymen. Before this war could ever end, I had to set aside my personal feelings. If I wanted to flip this filthy gambling table over, I first had to sit down and play by the church's rules, even if those rules were covered in filth and blood. Finally, my gaze stopped. I looked at a cage tucked away in the farthest corner. It was small, like a cage built specifically for a dog, but 5 thin figures were all crammed inside it at once. Rabbit girls. They didn't look very old at all. The oldest among them looked to be maybe 16 or 17, while the youngest wasn't even close to being an adult. They were wrapped in nothing but a few ragged scraps of cloth. The fabric barely covered them, exposing skin covered in festering, oozing wounds. I couldn't tell if they had fallen or been beaten half to death. In a world with medical care this primitive, those infections were a death sentence. They huddled together, shivering uncontrollably from the high fever and the sheer terror. Their furry ears, which should have been twitching with life, clung limply to their matted, messy heads. Their long tails were no better. They hung lifelessly on the floor, stained with mud and the filth of this society. Looking into their eyes, I didn't see hatred or resentment. I didn't even see despair. There was only a hollow, deathly numbness. It was as if their souls had been completely ripped away by this cruel world. All that remained were these breathing vessels, just bodies waiting for the rot to take them. They met every single requirement I had for what I needed next. The perfect, disposable consumables. The boss noticed me stop in my tracks. He understood immediately and grabbed the wooden club in his hand. He slammed it impatiently against the iron bars of the cage. The screeching metallic clang echoed through the air. It caused the 5 girls inside the cage to suddenly recoil toward the back corner. They huddled like terrified rabbits hiding from a hunter, letting out faint, suppressed whimpers from their throats. The boss spoke with a tone as bland and indifferent as a man, presenting a pile of firewood that nobody wanted. The cat-eared ones, he muttered. You know, they don't have much life left in them. No strength for heavy labor, but the upside is they're easy to handle. They're cheap, the best deal you'll find for a pair of warm bodies. 2 silver coins. 2 each, or 10 silver coins for all 5 is enough for me. He spat out the price, sounding too lazy to even look at the merchandise in the cage one more time. The boss made a face, showing blatant disgust all over his features, but he never said the obvious. They were already dying. They were infected with a fever and clearly wouldn't live much longer. I didn't feel like haggling this time. I knew that even if I tried to squeeze him, I wouldn't save much more than I already had. Besides, they were already cheap enough. I didn't want to stand there and devalue them anymore. Looking at those girls who already looked like ghosts, I reached into the heavy coin purse I carried. I pulled out 10 cold silver coins. I tossed them onto the wooden table, standing between us. The money landed right in front of the boss. The silver hit the wood with a sharp, clear ring. In this gloomy corner, the sound echoed with a jarring intensity. The greedy smile on the boss's face widened instantly. He snatched up the silver and shoved it into his pocket. Then he unhooked a rusty keyring from his waist. He picked out a small brass key and handed it over to me. This is the key to unlock the magic collars around their necks. The boss held it out with a greasy grin. Keep it safe. These collars are incredibly effective. These magic collars were basic items, crafted by the lowest level alchemists. If a slave tries to escape or wanders away, moving more than 10 meters from their master, the collar automatically constricts with violent force. It doesn't stop tightening until the slave dies of suffocation. It's like an invisible chain, firmly binding the fate of every slave. I took the key from him. The cold, greasy metal felt disgusting in my palm. The boss chuckled. That's the feeling I love most. His words made my stomach churn with physical nausea. He opened the cage door and started tossing them out like trash. He roughly dragged out all 5 of them. The young girls from the cat ear tribe stumbled forward. One by one, they collapsed onto the cold floor. I turned around immediately. I wanted to get out of that hellhole as fast as possible, but I wasn't just leaving one nightmare behind. I was stepping into a new chapter of this world, from one hell to another, where only the strongest survive. I looked back at the cat ear slave girls. The one leading the group caught my eye. She seemed to be the healthiest among them. She was the one whose physical condition was holding up best. I checked her status. Her name was Mia. Right now, Mia looked like nothing more than a walking corpse. Her eyes were hollow, and her mind was completely blank. She had no idea where she was being taken. She didn't even know who I was. She just instinctively followed my tall silhouette. I must have smelled like a complete stranger to her. She dragged her feet across the ground. Every step she took seemed heavy and exhausted. On this brutal path of life, fate had finally brought us together. The metal collar around her neck was heavy and cold. It felt rough against her skin. Even when she breathed, she could feel the weight of it. It chafed against the delicate skin of her throat, burning like a hot iron. A constant, stinging reminder, reminding her every single second of her reality, that she was nothing more than a piece of merchandise. I had just bought her and her 4 companions for 10 coins. 10 silver coins. That was the price of 5 lives. Mia silently calculated the value of her own existence in her head. She ran the numbers over and over. The total wasn't even enough to make a point. That amount couldn't even buy 5 healthy goats. It turned out her life wasn't even worth the price of livestock. Back when she was locked in that cage, she feared the worst. Mia expected to be bought by some rough-faced noble, or maybe a scarred mercenary, someone who would look at her with nothing but lust. She had heard too many horror stories about what happened next. The stories, the tragic tales of her tribe. They were treated like toys, tortured on a whim, and finally tossed aside like a dirty old rag, a true purgatory, a living hell with no end in sight. It was more terrifying than death itself. But now, I had bought them, and I looked quite young. I looked clean. Mia secretly lifted her head and stole a glance. She caught a quick glimpse of my back as I led the way. I was tall. I stood straight, the complete opposite of what she expected, like a knight, or a noble, elegant, nothing like those mercenaries, the ones who lived day and night in mud and blood. I didn't carry that stench, that disgusting smell of misery and gore. There was only a faint, clean scent, like fresh plants. She wondered, is he a good man? A single thought, a weak, unrealistic hope began to sprout silently in Mia's numb heart. Maybe I just needed some maids to clean the house and would actually feed them. Even if it was just moldy black bread and coarse linen clothes, it would be 10,000 times better. Anything was better than that freezing cage. She could feel a shift. The companions walking around her felt it too. They seemed to be thinking the exact same thing as her, harboring a faint, desperate ray of hope. Their steps toward the unknown future seemed a little lighter than before. They followed me through the bustling streets. I stopped at a fork in the road. A woman in leather armor with a long sword was already there. She was waiting for us, her gaze scanning the sky. It was 5 o'clock, and her expression was perfectly calm. Thank you, I said. I, Lin Fan, had gathered the community leaders to present my final decision. A warrior in heavy armor and 2 scouts stood beside her. Thank you, I repeated, acknowledging their presence. Thank you. Thank you. The woman's gaze swept over the girls once more. Her eyes were cold and professional as she examined them like livestock. She noted their thin frames and the infected wounds covering their skin. She frowned and muttered, if they're meant to be bait, they probably won't run very far, but as disposable consumables, they'll do. Bait, disposable consumables. Those words hit Mia like iron nails. They pierced her ears and sank deep into her soul. She watched as I, the man who bought them, remained silent. I simply nodded as if I agreed with the woman's assessment. In that instant, Mia felt her entire world shatter into pieces. That small, pitiful spark of hope she had just found. It was crushed into dust by those 2 heartless words. So, this was the truth of it. He didn't buy us because he needed help at home. He didn't want us to be his servants. He bought us to be used as live bait, not to work for me. They were just disposable consumables. Bait to be thrown to the monsters, to distract the beasts we couldn't defeat in the wild. Tools made of flesh and blood, used to buy us time. Time to escape. Mia's breath hitched. She began to tremble violently, losing all control. A despair deeper than any perverted noble could inflict overwhelmed her. It was a death sentence, 100%. She didn't have to worry about being tortured anymore. She didn't have to worry about what the future might hold, because her future was already written in stone. She was going to die, and she was going to die soon, torn apart by the claws of some nameless monster, out in the middle of the wasteland. One day soon, ripped by fangs until there wasn't a single bone left intact. This was the end of the road for them, dragged from one hell and dropped straight into another. Maybe this was better, Mia suddenly realized. She thought that maybe this was better. Death solves everything. No more living in constant, paralyzing fear every single day. No more existing as something less than human. She felt her own tears welling up. She wanted to laugh hysterically, but she didn't make a sound. She just wept in silence, tears carving clean streaks through the dirt on her cheeks. Some of the other girls were the same. They had clearly overheard the conversation too. The youngest girl among them, Lily, finally broke. She couldn't hold it back anymore and let out a muffled whimper. She sounded like a wounded kitten. Another girl, Anna, bit her lip so hard it bled, her body trembling violently. But Nia just stood there, stiff as a stone. She raised her filthy sleeve and clumsily wiped her face. She realized the fear was starting to fade. When you know death is inevitable, fear becomes a useless luxury. A strange calm washed over her as they were led to the city gates. The towering city walls divided the entire world in 2. The inside and the outside were 2 separate realities. Inside was civilization, order, and its own kind of hell. Outside the city walls lay nothing but desolation and chaos. A different kind of hell. A group of adventurers had been hired to escort the caravan. They were already there, waiting by the gate. Several heavy carriages were parked beside them. The guards handed the men and women over like cargo. The adventurers looked at the 5 girls without a shred of emotion. Their eyes were cold, clearly used to seeing this kind of trade. I watched as the signal was given to move out. The man who bought them gave the order. In a calm, freezing voice, the heavy iron-bound doors groaned open. The city gates slowly began to close behind the departing line. Nia took one last look back. She stared at the towering walls of Blackstone City. She knew in her heart that she would never return to this place. She turned her head forward toward the endless, desolate wasteland. The world was bathed in a haunting, scarlet moonlight. The barren plains stretched all the way to the horizon. Nothing but cracked earth and twisted, withered trees. The air was thick with decay and the stench of death. That was where her grave lay, Nia thought. She took a deep breath, letting the freezing air fill her lungs. Shivering, she walked silently toward the horizon. Taking her place at the end of the line, she stood there with the other 4 girls. Just a flock of lambs waiting for the slaughter. Right behind them followed the fully armed adventurers, marching into that wasteland that symbolized nothing but death. Chapter 30. Slaves bought for 2 coins. Silver, too valuable to throw away. Chapter 30. Slaves bought for 2 silver coins. A waste to discard. Nia felt like the soles of her feet no longer belonged to her. With every step, the sharp gravel pierced through the worn-out soles of her shoes, stabbing into her body. The rocks bit cruelly into the arches of her feet, but she didn't dare to stop. She didn't even dare to walk any slower. She just followed mechanically in that moment, staring at the tall, upright figure leading the way. Step by step, I followed her. The atmosphere in the group was suffocating. Aside from the wind, the only sound was the creak of the adventurers' ruined leather armor. That, and the rhythmic grinding of the wagon wheels against the stone path. The female warrior led the way. She turned and started walking away. Her steps were light, cautious, and deliberate. She moved like a leopardess ready to strike. She was poised to pounce on her prey at any second. The other 3 hired adventurers, a brute in heavy armor and 2 rangers, remained silent. They fanned out quietly on both sides of the line. They were there to guard the perimeter. They protected Lin Fan and the 2 wagons with unwavering focus. They held the center, while the 5 of us were treated like a group of nobodies. Just forgotten baggage trailing at the very end of the line. No one spoke to us, and no one looked at us. We were just disposable goods. I had already accepted it. That was the cold, hard reality of our situation. From the moment that man bought me, I knew my fate. My ending, and the ending of my companions, had already been written. Would we all just die in this desolate wasteland? This decaying place was turning into a world of the living dead. We were just fodder, walking straight into the jaws of some unknown monster. Our only purpose was to give our master a few extra seconds of life, buying him a precious moment to escape while we were torn apart. Maybe dying wouldn't be so bad. At least I wouldn't have to be a man anymore. No more worrying, no more suffering through this nightmare. No more hunger, no more fear, just nothingness. It beat being treated like cattle, selected by the Republic's government like meat, locked in iron cages. I thought it was finally time for death to take me. I felt indifferent, almost a sense of liberation, but there was one thing I couldn't shake. I couldn't let go of Lily, who was right there by my side. Lily was the youngest of the 5 of us, barely even grown. She was only 14 when the slavers snatched her and dragged her to Blackstone City. Her wounds were the most severe of all of ours. She was already burning up with fever the moment we left the slave market. Sister, I can't go on anymore. Lily's voice cracked. She sounded as weak as a dying kitten. I turned around and saw the color draining from Lily's face. Her face was flushed deep red from the fever. Those eyes of hers should have been as bright as the stars. Now they were clouded by a gray mist, and her lips were cracked. They were covered in peeling, dead skin. The moment she finished speaking, Lily's body swayed. She fell stiffly to the ground, and I screamed her name. Mia and the other girls cried out in terror. They rushed to surround her, and Mia reached out to touch her forehead. Lily's temperature was terrifyingly high. I looked down at the wound on Lily's leg again. The gash from the wooden splinter had rotted completely. The surrounding flesh was swollen, red, and oozing foul pus. The entire group came to a sudden halt. The 3 adventurers guarding us approached with cold expressions. A burly man in heavy armor, named Cal, led the way. He stared down at Lily as she lay unconscious on the dirt. He frowned, looking at her like she was nothing more than a broken tool. To him, she was just a piece of damaged goods.